What is going on, everyone? It's your boy, David Palmer, Leo King, and I'm with the one and only Robert Phoenix in the house. What's going on, Robert? Good to be with you.
David, it's always great to be with you, and really psyched to just get down and get dirty with this subject tonight.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to talk about because we were just saying when we were in the lobby before this, I was kind of saying like 2020 was crazy, but it feels crazier now, but it also is a continuation of it. Like everything that happened and everything that was set up, you can just, if you kind of put it all the pieces together, it's starting to look like all of it was for way bigger reasons, which a lot of us were talking about back then. But I think it's like kind of appearing in very, it's kind of like a hidden hand that's a lot more harder for a normie to see, because it kind of just is like, well, it's over and we're back to normal life and blah blah blah. It's like it ain't normal.
Yeah, no, it's not normal. And one of the things that you and I talked about was that during COVID, there were really definable lines, right? You were either in or you were out. And if you were out, you had to suffer some degree of consequence, whether it was not being able to go into a certain business, or you might have to quit your job, right? Or somebody like you who was out, you lost people, right? You lost folks that were just not into being out. They wanted to be in, right? So there was that line there. It was a very definable line. And if you had the spine, the backbone, and the courage to kind of hold the line, like you knew where you stood. But now there are no definable lines. Like everything is kind of, permeable, slightly erasable, but we also know that there's things going on, and then there's this continuation of what's happening from 2020 that is still in the air. There's a lot of just scar tissue and collateral damage that has happened to people in people's lives.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to a very old astrological term, which was conjunctionalist, right? So like the astrologers of like the 1300s were using massive conjunctions. And so if you look at 2020 to 2025, it's been Jupiter, Pluto, of course, Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, then we had Jupiter-Neptune 2022, then we had Jupiter, Uranus, and now we're in this massive stellium that has really come in with 3 planets moving in the outer realms into new signs at the same time this year. Like, this is pretty wild, but you have now that north node that's been sitting with that Saturn, Neptune, and then with Venus there, then with Mercury retrograde, Mars opposite Pluto 3 times. I mean, like, what you're getting is too many things all happening in a short amount of time. And that's how the astrologer predicted the Black Death in 1345, 2 years prior to it happening, and to the new Pope, which was the same astrology as what we're in now of the new Pope that came in 1344, was Pluto was at 2 degrees Aquarius and Neptune was at 0 Aries.
That's crazy. That's really crazy. And I remember when we were, me and you and Evan were talking just before the inauguration, and that Sun-Pluto conjunction, that happened at 1-0, right? Like throw that into the mix as well. The day that Trump got inaugurated.
Actually, I had that wrong. It was 1534, and that wasn't the astrologer, so I had that one wrong. But
well, you know what? Nobody really would have known.
So nobody would have known. I would have got away with that one, but I can't do that as an astrologer. I'm like, wait, hold on a second.
You can't do it. You just, the conscience says no.
I
gotta correct myself. That's good. I like that. But yeah, man, that's that Sun-Pluto conjunction. One of the things that the 3 of us talked about was like future shock, and people being, in the throes of, major overwhelm with like old systems breaking down, new systems that haven't been broken in, plus everything else that you brought into the discussion on top of all of it. It's like, I'm amazed sometimes at how people can just be functional on a day-to-day level sometimes.
Yeah, I think what it is too is there's so many parrots, meaning if I go on social media now, everybody's just regurgitating the same information. So really, the social media is the mainstream media now, and
Yep.
it's like you have people on the left and the right as the main source of info, and then everybody's just sharing the same thing. So really, it hasn't changed. It's just changed the way that it's delivered to us. And I
Right.
think my big problem has been over the last month watching the right turn into the left, as far as like taking things to the extremes and going into kind of like this like parrot world where it's like, because that right wing person said it, everybody else has to fall in line, and if you don't, then you're kind of not. And there is the question with Elon Musk as far as X goes, like, oh well, then you don't get the algorithm either, you know. So
Right.
it kind of
Yeah.
is like where it's like, I'm not afraid to like say, hey, this is a little weird. And so like, to me, that's been, I think, the annoying part, because it just kind of feels like, well, if something's wrong, you're supposed to call it out. Like when you and I did our interviews, like we were saying shit about Trump, even though we definitely aligned more with his policies and so forth. But when it came to like COVID or Operation Warp Speed, stuff like that, like you and I were saying everything that probably a person on the right would not want to say. But
That's
like,
right. Yeah.
you know, it's kind of like, it doesn't matter who's up there. I think that we have to remember that spirituality is about not doing harm to other people spiritually. And we're in a collective that like, we're now where it's like, I think it's a different kind of like danger, because it's, again, another information battle out there. But this one definitely has a lot of the taste of what the left did now being kind of thrown into the right. So that makes me look at like, there's a hand that you can't see that's screwing with everybody.
You know, when you brought up this idea of the alternative media now being the mainstream media, I couldn't help but get Tim Pool out of my brain when you said that. And I thought to myself, you know, Uranus and Taurus is in its detriment, and everything about Uranus and Taurus has been de-evolutionary. You know, it's like we've like moved into a version of idiocracy. I hate to say it, but it's true. And when you look at whatever you think of, like Walter Cronkite or Harry Reasoner or Huntley and Brinkley, like those guys, they all wore suits. They all had gravitas. They'd been in the news business for a long time. And when you sat down across from them on the TV while you were eating your TV dinner or whatever, like they were something, right? They theoretically stood for something, although Cronkite was a little, he has some weird connections. Right. So we've gone from those guys delivering the news as sort of paragons of trust to Tim Pool.
Right.
And it feels like, it just feels completely de-evolutionary. And I'm all for alternate media because this is kind of what we're doing right now. But it's like they've just become the new gatekeepers of the, of the state in a lot of ways. And it's not just Tim Pool, there's other people. And we had that really bizarre, scene where Cernovich and all these other quote unquote, pundits of the right got the fake Epstein folder. Like, what the fuck is that?
That's going to be one of those most embarrassing things of all time, because it goes to show too that there is another hand that's like fooling these people. And the fact that they didn't push back on the Trump administration to be like, why did you make us look like idiots? They just like fell in line and were like, oh yeah, no, we're going to get more. And it's like, are you that desperate to be liked? Because what I've noticed is, because I had a battle with an astrologer, I don't know, like a month ago, and he was claiming that I was saying, "Hey, like you're stealing my predictions."
We got to talk about this, right? We have to.
But I, and he was upset by the way I tore him down. But it was because I'm like, this guy posts his whole astrology off Trump and what the Republicans do, which, I mean, you can do that. I've seen that you know, on the left, especially, it's like you're doing what the mainstream astrology community is doing for the left, you know, and you're trying to get attention to hopefully like have, you know, Trump like watch your stuff or be his astrologer or something. And I'm sorry to say, but actually it's quite the opposite. None of these people want you as the parrot out there. They don't look at you as that big a deal. That's why Bill Maher was at the dinner. You know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, it's kind of one of those things to where it reminds me of like the last time Uranus was in Taurus and like communism and stuff. It's like the first people, once they get into power, the people that got you into power, they take those people out because they know they're weak.
Yeah, Maher he's an Aquarian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 0 degrees. So he's been I've said for years we're gonna watch the Pluto transit to watch him politically, and now he's really stuck. He can't. He's not on the left. He's not on the right. He's in the middle. Yeah. And so it's been interesting to see the attacks on both sides because of that dinner too. But it's weird because now I see a lot more on the right. It's like claiming you're that astrologer for that political party. Like,
well, I mean, let's talk about this because it's ideological, right? I mean, for a long time with astrology, there was kind of a left-leaning ideology with astrology, and it wouldn't come right out and say it, but it would have like certain qualities that would be associated, you know, kind of more, you know, sort of mystical, divine, feminine, right? Which, you know, ultimately morphs into sort of this weird thing that's been going on with, you know, women like supplanting men in positions of like you could just look at sort of the new age version of astrology and it's kind of left leaning, right? It kind of gets into feelings and, you know, you could, I remember when Barack Obama was running for president, all these new age fucking astrologers were so into Obama because for whatever reason, based on their ideology, they saw him as an avatar, right?
Well, it was all the DJs. I was a DJ at the time. Were like remixing Obama in tracks, right? So I definitely fell into the like, oh, and then, you know, I was on unemployment and I was smoking weed and I'm like, this motherfucker's talking about when he decimated McCain in the economic meeting. That's when I was like, okay, I'm going for fucking Obama because McCain had his moment. He's in the White House. That's a once in a lifetime moment where the presidential candidates Bush has in the meeting about the financial crisis and McCain just flubs.
He said we should delay the election.
I know.
That's what he said, right? And Obama's like, oh no,
He was sharp and he was on it, and he fooled a lot of us.
I got you on the ropes. We're not.
He fooled me.
This train ain't stopping. You get 2 points tonight because you corrected yourself on an obscure reference to the Pope, and now you've admitted that you were in the Obama
I was in the
camp.
Obama camp in 2008 for sure.
So, but it was easy to be kind of seduced on a new age level, right? Because he just checks all these boxes, right? He just checks all these boxes, and he's going to be the guy that's going to be the avatar. He's going to be fair. He's the redemption of the post-Civil War era and the civil rights movement. And it was a feel-good story. And for me, New Age astrology was always about kind of a feel-good story. You know, it wasn't about dealing with things that were uncomfortable. So that's where I got my start when back in, 2009. Really, my start was when I did Sarah Palin's chart and my website blew up. I'm like, well, who is this person? Why is she here? And then it dawned on me that the election wasn't about McCain and Obama. It was about Obama and Sarah Palin because they're opposite signs, right? Sarah Palin's an Aquarius. And that's really what the election
and the eclipses were in. That was the last time that we had the North Node in Aquarius that we're going to be coming into next year and so forth, and the South Node Leo and those Leo Aquarius eclipses. So and the same Mars retrograde we just finished that started in Leo, but it stayed in Leo. But that was also another part too after the election.
And then once Obama gets elected, boom, Pluto goes into Capricorn, right? And
Yeah.
all that new age stuff just goes away, right? Like Pluto and Capricorn is this hardcore reality, the housing crisis, and this massive scandal, with the
With the
mortgage
banks
market
and buying out GM
Oh my God, it's
and
just
Goldman Sachs and everybody getting a government giving money to hedge funds that are going to bet our American money to bail us out.
Right. I mean, you can see, the corporocratic state take shape right before your very eyes with Pluto and Capricorn. Hey, we're gonna own Dodge Chrysler for a while.
I know.
Right. And it's like, oh yeah, and we're gonna own AIG for a while too. And it's like, this is what's happening, Pluto and Capricorn. And so much for the fucking new age, right? And your avatar that's going to lead you into the new age. It was like kind of mind blowing when all that happened. And then here we go. We have Trump, who's at the other end of that cycle, coming in with Pluto and Aquarius.
Right.
And Trump is supposed to be the guy that's going to save the economy. Trump is going to bring back jobs, and he's going to shrink the government, and he's going to do all the things that theoretically were supposed to happen when Obama came into office. And and Trump said, oh yeah, we're going to bring in a golden age too, right? This is like this golden age. But instead, what do we see now with Pluto and Aquarius?
Iron Age?
Like it's definitely the irony. It's definitely the irony age for sure.
Yeah.
Right. But like, what do we really see? We're like, oh no, we're not getting any flying cars anytime soon. Right. So
we're not getting the Epstein files that we were promised. We've been lied to about that the whole time. I think that the other big thing, of course, is the economy, because that's one thing Trump was great with in 2017 when he got elected, and definitely proved his point really well, even through COVID. Like, it was like, get back to work. He's like telling people, like, telling every state, stop your lockdowns the whole time. But it was the states that were holding people back. So, but now it's wild, because I mean, every poll right now is saying 70% of Americans are not happy with the economy. That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
and I think there was a lot of expectation as well too. Like, and to be fair, the economy was being lied to. They were having to change the numbers for all of the non-farm payrolls. Like every other month they would like lie and say there was all these hundreds of thousands of jobs, and then they'd correct them 4 months later. So like, we've been on a fake economy that was moving to finally like, oh, let's drop it on Trump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and most of the jobs that were created were government jobs. I mean, that was the thing the Biden administration did. Tail end of Pluto and Capricorn. Let's get our last licks in. Right. Let's make the governmental beast as large as we possibly can before we leave town, and they have to dismantle everything. It'll just be harder for them to dismantle, everything that we built while they were away, and that was really, I think, part of the strategy. And now we're faced with some really interesting realities coming down our path. But before we go there, I just want to get back to this ideology piece.
Yeah,
because I think it's really important. And and I've noticed this, and you encountered it with, Starseed Astrology, and I've seen other people on Twitter. One guy,
well, the far left and the far, I don't even know what to call Starseed, but
the far right, or the people on the right, they've jumped on the Trump patriot MAGA train with astrology. I have seen this.
Yeah.
Right. And it some of this started a little bit with Q, but I'm
100%.
But I'm seeing these astrologers, and they're saying things that, number one, are pretty obvious, and number two, some of the things they're saying are wrong. Right. Yeah. And this is what was going on with Starseed Astrology, because I followed them for a while and they followed me, and I would see the shit that they were posting on Twitter, and I kept having to correct them. I'm like, no, you've got this wrong, right? You're coming at this from an ideological perspective. And when you do that, you're going to be biased. And we all have bias, but that's not astrology, right? That's your own filtered view. And I got tired of it. And so I had to block them because I didn't want to see their posts anymore. It became like arduous to have to play, I felt like I was correcting a student's paper. And it was I don't want to go there.
It was like any article that comes out, it was saying without proof, we predicted this. And I'm like, I didn't know there were two of them. So it got very confusing. And then I'm like, so what am I copying if I can't see on your Twitter a prediction? There's no like, we're predicting this because of these planetary alignments and this will happen. And that I never saw that. I always saw the back end of like, we predicted this.
Right.
And the only way the scuffle happened was because there was somebody who had watched me on my network talk about something that I had predicted about before, which was just Neptune coming into Aries and how at the end of Pisces, souls and it coming to the forefront in Aries, you could really see who's behind the soul mask that people wear. And then they connected it with like demonic aspect of it all. So somebody was like, oh, Leo King said something like that. And then they went full front assault on me as if I've been stealing them forever when I've been doing it longer than them and for such a long time. And I have so much public stuff out there that I say years before it happened on video. And so I was just like, excuse me? And I was nice to them and cordial, like, hey, like, I thought we were cool.
Yeah.
And it just turned into where it got crazy. And then I just like backed off after that. I was just like,
well, isn't that in some ways indicative of Neptune and Aries though too? It's kind of like somebody wants to be on the top. Somebody wants to be first, which is very Aries-like. Somebody needs to be right? It's like we can't disagree or can't compromise. And if they're wrong, there's no apology. So to me, it's like so fucking Aries that this happened. And then Neptune is just fraught with confusion, deception, illusion, and even like what's the motivation? Like, what was the motivation behind that?
I think I'm glad you brought that up because it's more spiritual than like what people might think. It's like, so he accused me of doing something, right? Like stealing from him, basically trying to portray myself as him, which the irony was because I had to use my trademark because they had taken my live video I did on X and they had put it on their Facebook without asking me. So that's my intellectual property and it's my shit, right? And so they put that out on Facebook, tried to like use it against me. So I just filed a trademark law on Facebook and they removed it because I have a trademark. It's not easy to get one. You got to go through a year with lawyers and all this stuff to get one. And they got all upset. But it made me go, oh, let me look into their business. Either he's not American or he's a criminal or something because I don't know if that's his wife or whatever. She started this LLC in Arizona. He was never on the director of the LLC or any of the board members, right? Then they removed him off being like director, and then they basically made a DBA called the Starseed Astrology, which he's part of, but she's the owner of the LLC and the main member, and he's never a member, and it shows him removed, and he's the director, meaning he just takes the flow of information from the government to the state to the business, but he's technically not a member because LLCs deal with members. So he's actually not the owner of Starseed Astrology, his wife is.
Wow. Again, Neptune.
And she never really does any of the stuff. It's always him claiming it's him. So it's really weird. Yeah. Like I was like, whoa, that guy's not even the owner of the company. So he's hiding behind his wife to do all the stuff, which is really weird.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have an American name. So to be honest with you, I think he's an immigrant who probably doesn't have papers or something weird. Because LLCs are also, you can be foreign and own one, but in America, you can't own a corporation if you're not a citizen.
So the picture that I saw of him, he looked Asian. Is he Asian?
I don't know what he is, but His name is Saul or something. And he could, I don't know. I have no idea. But that was the whole irony, is like, you're telling me I'm impersonating somebody. What are you impersonating? That's kind of the Neptune.
That's Neptune and Aries, man. But it's Neptune and Aries. It's about identity, right? It's like fluid identity. It's like, well, this is my shit. Well, no, it's not your shit. This is my shit because I have a copyright on this. I have a trademark.
That exactly. So like, they took actually my stuff and put it on their stuff. So they did exactly what they're accusing me of, which I've never taken any of their content or anything and put it on my stuff. And I'm definitely not taking anything because I can't see anything on their Twitter. They don't have a YouTube. They don't have like a place where I could see videos of them doing anything. So I don't know what.
It's a total appropriation of identity. It's like Neptune and Aries, man. It's like they were squatting on your identity. I mean, that's really what and then again, I don't know how this came up, but the whole, he's stealing our predictions. And when I saw that, I'm like, this is really fucking stupid. Like, you don't have time to go watch other astrologer shit. Like,
I don't think any astrologer does. If you're an astrologer, you're not, it's not like I watch all of your videos. I get to catch up on, like, if it's the right moment, I will catch your show when I am able to, when it just naturally happens. And then you and I catch up as friends as astrologers. Nobody's just sitting and watching somebody and going, write down a piece of paper, like, and then they said this, and then they did that, and then they did that, and then I need to go put that out there. Like, I don't know. That is just wild to me.
And again, it's because I know you, right? And you're always freaking working. And when you're not working, you're dealing with your family. So when do you really have time to go into their world, right, and go watch what they're doing? So
when I was out, when we were in Texas in 2022, that's what I was doing, Robert. I was in the corner when I was asking you for internet. I was in the corner because I needed to go to Star Seed Astrology, and I needed to do that for my presentation and for my talk, or when I was with Evan and everybody else, and we were playing the game to answer questions. I had to know all that. I needed my reason. I needed to call Regis up, So
I love your honesty tonight. The truth comes up. But yeah, man, it was
like a weird place because it kind of makes you look at, what's happening right now. Because some people have been lately being like, oh, you're just now a Trump basher. And it's like, no, I'm not. There's a lot of good things. Like, I'm happy that he corrected everything back to the middle as far as where the woke stuff had gone, where we were going when it came. I mean, because even if the finances suck at the moment, at least there is this, something has to change. Because if we keep going the other way, it's going to be bad. And the pain right now, it depends on who you are. So, it's affected people I know really well who do manufacture things in China. Like, they're fucked because they have to take out a loan to cover the tariff, or the docks right now here in Long Beach, you have to be a big corp like Walmart or anything to put it into a spot to where you could just sit it and pay a little bit amount of money to be stored until it hopefully goes away in a month or two. But they're full. So anybody else, you can't stop the boat from coming in, and you got to pay the fucking tariff. You got to pay the government the money.
Right. Well, some people believe that this is a controlled demolition of the economy so that they can get to what you and I and Evan were talking about before Trump got elected, which is digital world, right? Digital world, digital dollars.
World, yeah. I mean,
right. Yeah. And this is the engineered collapse, right? Coming from guys like David Sachs, or Jamie Dimon, or whomever is whispering in Trump's ears. Like, you do this and you overload the system and you collapse this thing, the sooner the better, the faster the you do it, the quicker we can get onto this new system. And that is fraught with its own, pitfalls. And so what do you think about that in terms, again, we're in the last degrees of Uranus and Taurus before we move into Uranus and Gemini, where we've been dealing with this whole money issue with Uranus and Taurus and crypto and the dollar. And when Uranus goes into Gemini, this thing is going to shoot out like a fucking cannon.
I know.
Right. And changes are going to happen so quickly. Many people are not going to be prepared for that. So where are you with this idea that they're imploding this on purpose so that they can get to this sort of new digital dollar that we're all going to have to theoretically sign up for?
Well, I think I'm at where, whether I look at the Pluto Aquarius return that we're in transit-wise, that was the Continental Army creating continental money that was paper money that was worthless, right? In order to try and get that whole movement going, and most soldiers didn't get paid, or the money that they did get paid, it was so hyperinflated that, and it was overprinted, that it really wasn't worth much. Or if I look at Neptune in Aries in the Civil War, and when Venus conjuncted it, like we're going to see this week, the first time it did after Neptune's ingress, which happened in 1862, so it happened almost a year after Neptune had made its ingress. That's right when Lincoln creates the first income tax that's ever been on Americans. There was no Federal Reserve. It was about creating a national bank and printing greenbacks out and selling it off bonds and debt, and not being based off gold and silver. So that actually started with Lincoln, and then the same thing happened in the South, where they did super hyperinflation, where it even says under the like $100 there, it'll say like 2 cents per day of debt incurred by them. And it was weird, because if you look at the money in the South, it was like more about the statement. So it was like, it's been like, this scene is 6 months prior to the peace and unity of the Union, until, you know, the United States did this to us. And it shows like the American eagle being like killed by like Lady Liberty, and the South being the one, like, as if we're the victims, but them also showing slaves in a field as if it's a beautiful sunny day on the money, which is really, you know. But it kind of reminds me of where we're at with the crypto stuff. I even think of like Uranus at the end of Taurus with hyperinflation in Germany, that created, of course, a lot of how World War II starts. But also, even in America, we were in the same position of all social services. FDR, he packed the court because the Supreme Court had said at the beginning of the 1900s that having Social Security would be technically not constitutional. They add 3 more justices to the court, pack a bunch of Democrats in there, and pass the social reform and the Great New Deal, and completely obliterate. Everybody has to kind of go back to that kind of point that happens after 1913, because 1933 is, let's shut the banks down twice. And that's at the same ironic time. 1933 is when Hitler got in, right, in Germany.
Well, what's interesting is that if you go back and look at Uranus and Aries, which predates World War II just slightly.
Right.
If you look at all the inventions that happened during that time, it will blow your freaking mind. X-rays, television, radio, complex plastics. It's like they are like putting all this together, right, with Uranus and Aries. And then they take it out in World War II and they road test it. Like, that's what World War II is about, is road testing all these technologies. But to your point, the end of Uranus and Taurus, which is at the end of the war, and then you get into the Nuremberg trials, what happens? Germany is hit with reparations. The second time after 2 wars, right? The first World War, huge reparations, cripples Germany, which, you know, leads to the Weimar Republic, and then eventually you have the rise of the
and demilitarization and not allowing to create a big military.
Right, and Germany gets hit again at the end of World War II with the last degrees of Uranus and Taurus, and they are paying out Holocaust reparations to this very day as a result of that.
And Berlin gets split up into the east and to the west. USSR takes over the other side of the wall.
Isn't that interesting? Because Uranus and Gemini comes in, and you get that split, right, between the east and the west, and the Berlin Wall, and like, hello, Uranus and Gemini. It doesn't get much more Uranus and Gemini than that shit, right?
Yeah, so, and that was definitely like near the end of it, because I think 1940, right, and then into 41's Uranus ingress, like we're about to have, and then the war plays out, and by the end of it, it is split. The reparations become really intense by the time it comes to the Cancer, and at the same time, I'm like, that America took on the highest debt that we ever had was 1944 into 45, which is exactly where we're at right now. Is if we were to use it from the scale of inflation, we're at the same kind of like the highest point where we ever were in debt where we were overextended and all that stuff was literally World War II. But it's weird because either A, we're already been in a world war for 5 years,
Right,
and that's
right,
why
exactly.
it's so high, and
Yeah.
they just don't tell everybody about it.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
we're really
totally.
screwed because we're not in one yet, and we're that high. It's one or the other. You know what I mean? Like at that point.
Well, I look. I think we've been in a war for a while. Like they just shifted the tactical front from COVID to Ukraine, and this is to me
and Afghanistan, right? Like that was an
Afghanistan was in place.
Yeah,
that was in place, right? But they basically went from COVID to Ukraine. Like, okay, we've run this program as far as we can. Right, Biden ran into all these problems with the Supreme Court, and it's like, oh, let's start the Ukraine war. And by the way, the Ukraine war started on the United States Pluto return,
right?
Like at 27 Capricorn, and they were, dude. This is I was like talking about this back then. It's like let's transpose America's Pluto return to Ukraine, and we're going to make Ukraine the new America, and Zelensky's going to be the new Washington, and they're the ones that are fighting for their freedom. This is really the true revolution. I'm watching what they're doing. This is like a total fucking bait and switch. You know, this is prestidigitation. Let's take the Pluto return and just give it to Ukraine, and they're the ones that are fighting for democracy. And everybody's got a freaking Ukraine flag everywhere. Not an American flag, but a Ukraine flag. And I'm like, this is some fucking high magic these people are doing. Because
I think
totally flip that energy.
The problem is because you're right, and the astrology is exact of our Pluto return, and you could take the basic structure of that whole idea as if, oh, Ukraine is an independent country and they need to fight their overlord, right, Russia, and look at he's a dictator like King George, and right, and you could use that. But the problem is it was our Pluto return in Capricorn, and our lesson was we weren't trying to get everybody else involved. We tried forever to get France involved. Benjamin Franklin was able to pull it off with a lot of wine and, with his gout, having sex with women, to be able to pull it off with all these really rich oligarchs that were in France to give money and to also give munitions and so forth secretly under the nose of the king of France until he finally jumped okay at the very end, right? But the problem is you already have, let's say France is us and the NATO. Do they show up with all the boats and wait till a moment? I think that's what they were maybe thinking. We'll wait till the moment until Cornwallis is all fucking bunkered up and he's got nowhere else to go and he's gonna have to surrender. That ain't happening though. It's been the opposite. There hasn't been a turn in the war. If anything, it just keeps getting worse. Or North Korea in this last week just doubled down. It's now like 15,000 soldiers because they lost 3,000. But Kim Jong-un just announced this week, we're in a military union and partnership with Russia. It's gone great. And ironically, they made their deal with Iran in 2022 into 2023. So now you have that as a huge alliance. And then I don't know if you saw this week, but North Korea has a fucking destroyer now, and they have like a naval destroyer, and they have all these new ships they've been showing.
They got it from Temu. They got it from Temu.
Oh, well, Temu's got great deals up until the tariffs.
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, North Korea is so weird for me because I almost feel like it's this proxy state that only exists to be a boogeyman in some ways. Like how do they stay in business? Like, how does Korea feed
they don't export, they don't they only import.
Yeah. So somebody, whether it's the Chinese or the Americans or it's kind of this weird joint venture, it just feels to me like it's a proxy state. And
yeah, probably after the North Korean War, the Korean War, right? Like, and that split too. That probably became like, oh yeah, like we infiltrated, we made a deal. It's used in a certain way. It's probably an experimental place where we can experiment with things farther beyond communistic aspect, because over there it's like the highest kind of rate of communism you can get. Like, what does it really look like?
Oh, it's total control. It's full control. From what I've seen from people that have gone there.
Yeah, all the
videos.
Vice documentaries, like those are the only ones that really went in 15 years. Pluto and Capricorn 2008 went in there.
Like you're not allowed to be alone on your own, pretty much.
No, or all the food that's there for a guest, but it's really not really there, and all that weird stuff. Or people, they'll fight. And K-pop, ironically, is the only thing that like people will die for over there to listen to a song that's not some weird stuff. That definitely feels manufactured for sure, almost like a video game.
Yeah, I mean, North Korea feels like it's this weird. Anytime you get Dennis Rodman going there to practice diplomacy, right? It just feels like this weird proxy state. So I take them moderately seriously, like on the world stage. But yeah, man, I just think that the sleight of hand they did with Ukraine at the end of COVID, hijacking the Pluto return and literally just transposing it to Ukraine, was one of the greatest acts of astrological magic I've ever seen. Right? It's like, who thought of that? You know, and instead of arousing, like, oh, it's the Pluto return of the United States, and instead of like Trump being in his second term and, you know, kind of going strong and people feeling good about America and, you know, being able to disconnect from whatever theoretical forces of tyranny and flying American flags. Oh no, we're flying Ukraine flags. Like that to me was some dark high magic.
Well, and I think what we just saw in Canada is a good example of when we try to, you know, put our energy and like support another place. Or, I mean, like Canada just went, their whole election was based off Trump, which is really weird, right? Like they chose the Liberal Party again because they just don't want Trump at all to meddle in any Canadian affairs. So that's how he ran. And he's a central bank guy, and he's also a WEF, like head up finance guy. So it's kind of an interesting thing where it doesn't, I think my point is it's kind of like, it doesn't just work. If you look at Washington's words after all the war happened and after he became the first president, he was like an isolationist as far as being neutral. Like we shouldn't have allies. It's going to cause us problems. And we just help people when it's in our right moment and it's fair. And then if it's not, then you just back away and you don't take a side. We don't follow that anymore. So I think the idea of like making like Zelensky Washington that they tried to do is the dumbest thing ever, because if you follow the history, he wasn't asking for everybody's help.
No. But I mean, it feels like that's how he was being painted, right? This great military leader. And I mean,
and he is an Aquarius with everything at the early Aquarius. So to me, I've had a prediction, and it might be not right, but I feel like he actually is in bed with Putin, and he's been playing the idea because he was installed. Let's not forget, right? The election was a fraud that he was installed with. You know, like I thought it was interesting at the funeral for the Pope that they went up to John Kerry and were like, "You were Secretary of State when Crimea was taken over by the Russians," and he's like, like starting to be like, won't even like be honorable and admit that, yeah, he screwed up during that one if it's such a big deal, right? I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, who installed Zelensky? Was it really America? Like maybe sometimes we take credit for things we didn't do, you know? Like that,
well,
that's one where it's like, where's all the money? Out of all the people in the world, it was weird to see Ben Shapiro interview Zelensky, but he did at least hit him with some of the things we want to know of like.
Well, I don't think it's so weird actually, because they both belong to the same faith, and
right.
they're genetically related to a certain part of Europe. So I don't find that weird at all.
Well, because I mean, I know that they've been shutting down in Ukraine, like a lot of churches, and I know that Putin yesterday just put out like, "Hey, I'm ready to come to the table, but Crimea stays with us, and all these other regions in the east that voted for Russian energy." One of the main ones, though, was like that Christianity's allowed to stay, and that they can't stop the churches there, and especially the Russian version of churches. So that was a big part of it. And so that makes you kind of look at it like, well, I mean, I've seen the videos, I've seen plenty of the stuff. I mean, they've really come after different religions there. And so there is a big question about that. And I think that's kind of an interesting place to go, is like, where are we now at? It kind of is this crazy moment where Saturn, Neptune, of course, it's been in Pisces. It's playing itself out as far as it can in Pisces, but they meet in Aries next year. And the end of Pisces to me is, it is faith. We got Jupiter. People keep forgetting Jupiter's getting ready to square Neptune.
Right.
And so really, I think, and that's going to be happening right at the beginning of the cardinal points. And we finished 2 of the squares with Jupiter-Saturn, but we're also going to finish the Jupiter-Saturn square in the cardinal signs. And so that's all going to be about this new understanding and this new way. And it's really about, the institutions of the religious orders across the world. The one that we haven't heard too much about, which I would say there's 2 parts of it. You kind of have Saudi Arabia and Muslim world, right? You have kind of the more chilled out one, and then you have hardcore Iran. And how is that kind of playing out? I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing. We've seen enough, but we haven't seen like kind of the full front of it experiencing itself, because we're seeing a new pope that's going to come through in the next couple of weeks, and we don't know what that is, and that's all political, and that's why the funeral is there, and that's why there's a bunch of cardinals right now that are making deals, getting paid out. I mean, like, it's all about this religious institutional world and how it affects us globally. And so you have Zionism on one side, you got the Catholic Church on another, and then you have 2 different versions that are split right now in the Muslim tradition, and they kind of live themselves out through the leaders of the countries there.
Yeah, man, you've opened up a really, really big topic here. So I want to go back a little bit, and I want to talk about this Jupiter-Neptune square that you sort of launched into and started this whole thing. And whenever you get into like Jupiter squares, this is my understanding on them and take on them. It's kind of like this like gambler's aspect. Like Jupiter always comes in that square and says, why not? Like roll the dice here, overcommit. Right, you feel pretty good about it, don't you? Right, you tend to bite off more than you can chew with a Jupiter square when it's going on. And sometimes, if you can fake it till you make it, it'll work. Right, it's like you can pull it off sometimes with the Jupiter square. But to me, that's how I see it. Like in an individual chart, when you have it natally or through a transit, in a much larger sort of macro perspective, right? We have this Neptune in Aries, which to me feels a lot like, Onward Christian Soldier, which we sort of, started to talk about before we went live. And then you have Jupiter in Cancer, which really amplifies these sort of cultural traditions of America, or the folk, right, or the family. And some of it may be like very real. Like there are still people I know here in Texas are hardworking people. They have family values, they go to church, like a lot of this stuff is still alive and happening, right? But then when you have this Neptune square with Jupiter, it almost feels like this sort of overzealous or kind of over amplification of what those values look and feel like. And it almost feels like people are like doubling down and tripling down, especially with like Trump and MAGA, and you don't like the tariffs? Like, fuck you. You're not with the program. Like, get with the program. You're getting in the way. You're either on board with us or you're not. What are you, a Democrat? Right? This is what Democrats do. This is what the left does. They stay together. We should stay together. So screw your independent thoughts and just get on board. And to me, the Jupiter-Neptune square feels a lot like that. It's kind of like this amplification of these values and ideas, and I think that they're good. I think that they're essential, but with Neptune, it goes into a very, very different place. And it's almost completely unrealistic. And yet, there are some people who are so drawn to that spirit that in some ways it doesn't matter, and they'll be able to kind of pull it off, right? Which is indicative of Jupiter-Neptune square. So I feel like we've got that going on, and we also have the Saturn square coming in too. And also, I think with Jupiter and Cancer, we're dealing with the housing market.
Yeah.
And how Neptune's going to affect that, how Saturn's going to affect that, right? Because I think that we are becoming more and more aware that there's a significant housing issue in this country. Like houses just aren't moving, right? Is it because it's the prime, or is it because BlackRock and a bunch of people bought a shit ton of homes and turned them into Airbnbs? Or is it because like these huge swaths of immigrants are now getting a lot of these homes that BlackRock went out and bought? I don't know what the answer is to that, but I do know that this housing crisis, the real estate crisis, is going to be exacerbated with those early squares. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is if we go where you're at right there, it's being called the millennial recession, because the problem is with all of Social Security, the old school idea of 401ks, and especially what we're seeing is a shift in generations. Like, you know, the baby boomers, the last generation, and some of the older Planet X, but it's like very little that are getting like huge inheritances, right? Like inheritance is like not really a thing anymore. And so you have a lot of people who have homes and a lot of things that have been acquired through long lines of families just passing it on. And then plus, you know, the people that are in power over the last 70 years have truly made this system for them to work to where they get taken care of by the end of their life, with even Medicare right now. I mean, if you just think about where it's at, like my generation ain't going to get all that. We already know the money's not solvent for even a decade anymore. We're talking years left. That's it. Like, and they're already borrowing to do that. That's where most of the money goes, is in social welfare. And so the idea of Neptune and Aries, social welfare kind of gets thrown out the window. Saturn coming into Aries and Neptune in Aries, because, you know, it becomes, you kind of have to figure things out for yourself. And that Jupiter square Neptune, I think, is also in the same effect of like when it comes to, can people feel comfortable with finding their own way to spirituality? Because I think the problem is, and it's because it's going to be such a powerful Sun, Jupiter, new moon conjunction in square to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. It's coming in June on the solstice.
Yeah.
And that feels like one of the bigger squares I've seen probably in our lives, especially when you're dealing with Jupiter, Saturn. It's always going to be like a huge diversion of life, of all, like the rudder is turning the whole world a new direction hard, especially at the beginning of cardinal signs.
Yeah.
And to have Saturn, Neptune there with this new moon, Jupiter in square, I mean, it feels about people's comfort levels about having to go through the world a little bit more commando, or a little bit more, you know, pull out your knife and cut through the fucking shit that's in front of you as you walk through the jungle a little bit here. Like, you know, like people
you better be careful where you say that, right?
Oh, I know, but
like if you said that in Frisco, Texas right now, you might get run out of town.
Oh, fuck,
but I know what you're saying, right? And I talked about this on Sunday night. And I talked about how in Neptune in Pisces for 15 years, what we saw was the spiritual institutionalization of victimization, right? This is what happened with Neptune in Pisces. We became like inundated with the grievance society, and we had to look after every special interest group, whatever. Like we're using terms like ableism.
Right.
You know, and it's like it reached like ridiculous heights with Neptune and Pisces. You're like, what? You know, we have to honor this person and this group. Like, why? You know, since when did this become, you know, part of the Constitution or the fabric of America? And so we have like peak victimization, Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Aries, people don't have any patience for victimization anymore, right? It's kind of
No,
like,
it takes compassion, and it actually brings it from 100% into even maybe more. It's like taking lines of empathy 24/7.
right,
What you turn out to be like an empathy crackhead.
right.
To none at all. Like, it actually, Neptune is very harsh in Aries. I mean,
Yeah.
it becomes to where we have to use the Civil War because it is one of the best markers. And it
Yep.
literally was like, I'm sorry, but your leg's going to be cut off. The gangrene's bad. I'm chopping it off, throwing some salt on it, and have a nice day. Right? It wasn't like Veterans Affairs was there to be like, oh, you're a veteran now. We're going to take care of you. No, like you're in the fucking grass. There's dead bodies everywhere, and you have gangrene, and they chopped off your leg, and there's fucking. Do you have any more salt? This fucking thing hurts. And no, Abe Lincoln or no, I'm sorry, none of the Confederates are gonna show up and help you at that point.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's a great encapsulation of it. I just feel like people have reached their limits of patience with sort of special interests and special groups and special people and special days. It's like, sorry, tough shit. And one of the areas that this is being played out in is black-white relations, right? Because for a long time, right? Let's go back to Martin Luther King, civil rights movement, right? This hard-fought journey to be inclusive and being a part of America. Well, after that happened, America began to shift its attitude toward Black African Americans. And you saw kind of more participation in sports, right? There was much more integration. I grew up in California, total melting pot.
He actually had a message that connected to every American, and brought up the characters, the morals, talked about his relationship with family, his relationship.
Well, I think Martin Luther King is a deeply flawed person, but he did say we need to judge people by the character of their content and not their race.
I guess I'm comparing it to George Floyd being a bad example of trying to deal with it because, I mean, what did he say to anybody, like, or want to make this world better? He is actually doing bad things. And when you see the full tapes, I mean, the guy was literally like, ate all the fentanyl, was calling his girl mama, not asking for his mom. And he had just done that the month prior when he got arrested too.
Oh, he was lit. He was totally lit.
So I guess that was my point, was like, at least with MLK, there was.
Again, Uranus and Taurus, I rest my case, de-evolutionary.
Right.
Right. If you start off with Capricorn, Martin Luther King, you eventually descend down into Libra, George Floyd. Right. And it's all about.
And that's where the Neptune and Pisces mixed with all the Capricorn stuff happening made it to where, I mean, they fucking took baseball stadiums and made people to go get shots and like tents for everything. And everybody was so like, it's just too empathetic and it's too lost and all this stuff, to where now I kind of look at it like this is going to be the Neptune now in Aries, return of the Civil War. That's just happened. So when it comes to the issues there, this is where it comes to a head now.
I'm telling you, this whole thing in Frisco, Texas, with Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf and his brother, they are cooking this thing. And they are cooking this thing to be OJ 2.0 and George Floyd 2.0. And Frisco, Texas is right on the 33rd parallel where JFK was shot, RFK was shot, and Martin Luther King, just a hair off of it, was also shot in Memphis. It's all on that line. This is all ritual theater.
I'm on the 33rd line too.
You are, man. You are on the 33rd line, but you're on the right side of the 33rd line. So this is all Civil War shit too, right? But it's weirdly inverted. It's weirdly inverted, right? Because the weird inversion was, well, during the Civil War, who were the victims? Well, it was the black slaves. I mean, that is the most common answer most people would give, right? But if you really look at what's happened socially and politically, right? Like when I watch the NBA on TV and I watch the commercials, I am stunned when I actually see a white male on those commercials. You don't see them. Like, who are they selling products to during these commercials? Right. And we've seen almost like this DEIification. That's what I call it, the DEIification of a certain group of people who, by the way, are being completely manipulated. So we're going to raise you up. Right. Not only going to raise you up, but guess what? In San Francisco, if you steal $995 worth of shit at a Walgreens, we won't even arrest you. We'll give you a ticket. Right. So there's been this, which I think
is in LA, but it was like more like, oh, if it's, you know,
what they've done is they've created this special class, right? This special class, which, you know, hey, look, if I was black and I was like getting perks and shit, hell, I might take advantage of it as well. I don't know how I'd react, right? But they did that and they inverted everything. And so now what happens is you've got a bunch of white people who have been watching this over the last 5-6 years, and they've been watching violence, like, you know, black on white gang crime, which is being run on Twitter, TikTok all the time. And then now you have a bunch of white people who are saying, guess what? You know, we're not as patient with this stuff anymore, right? We, you know, we were down with this whole civil rights thing, but you are exhausting your social credit now. And there are people in the black community that talk about this, right?
I know. I mean, if you just watch MSNBC, I mean, it literally is just a network that literally puts down white people as like being the worst people, and that you can't trust white people. And now you have Crockett, who's in the House, who's literally
she's an act. She's an actor.
I know she is, but she also is. She's an
Aries.
She's the other side for the AOC for one side, and she's taking the other side.
Right. And by the way, AOC's a Libra and she's an Aries. So you've got your cardinal axis, right? So even there are people in the black community who are saying, you know what? Like, you guys got to stop acting the fools. Like, I'm hearing this. And these are from like liberal black journalists, spokespeople. They're like, oh, you know, we got to stop acting this way because we are about to completely expend our social credit, right? And now you're starting to see that because with the end of the era of victimization, Neptune and Pisces, there's going to be a lot less forgiveness with Neptune and Aries. And I think this is where we get into this inverted version of the Civil War, which is cooking right beneath our feet right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what's weird is it was the Southern Democrats who really did go that far, but it's like you don't want to start sounding like Jefferson Davis about white people, you know what I mean? But inverting it, because that's kind of what's happening. Or the journals of Robert E. Lee and what he thought about, oh, well, blacks are here by God to serve us, and it's in the Bible and all that. Like it was really biblical. And that's what scares me about the rise in, I would call it Christian nationalism, because there's forms of it. It's not maybe fully there, but it's kind of being forced into the way that people look at the government as Jesus Christ made this government. I mean, I had to push kind of hard last week on people to be like, listen, the Masons started this government. They were deists. Washington himself wrote about it. Jefferson said he never wanted to do the national prayer, and that was the worst thing that ever was done because it created this kind of, they had to say multiple times in the National Archives that this is not a Christian nation. And so you're seeing the upswell of that while you're seeing the inversion of the Civil War with black and white culture.
This is what I'm trying to get at. It's
all at the same time.
It is an inversion of the Civil War, and there are people in chat who are telling us to change the subject because they find this commentary politically offensive or defends their sensitivities. I'm looking at it from an astrological perspective.
Straight up. I agree with you.
This is an astrological perspective. And if you can't handle the truth about what we're talking about, I'm sorry. I'm not here to sugarcoat it for you. I'm not here to, beat my chest for a fucking race war. If anything,
no.
I want to avoid that. like the
I agree
freaking
with
plague.
you.
Right?
If we can't talk, so this is exactly what happened to us about COVID when we said before the shot came out, like, listen, the astrology's bad for experiments.
So now we're being called racist.
Now we're being racist.
Now we're being called
okay.
racist.
It's like,
right. Okay. You know what happens when we have a fucking civil war?
I know.
We have lockdown. Right.
Right.
We have lockdown.
Like a real lockdown, a military.
Real lockdown.
We will have
military freaking lockdown. Hello, Saturn in Aries.
I know. Yeah,
right.
It's
like,
true.
This is I want to avoid that at all costs. Like I want to hang out with people. I want people to understand that we're being manipulated, and this is Neptune and Aries.
Yes,
right? We are being manipulated to be at each other's throats. And it's being
because martial law just takes one little flick of a switch, and you're not leaving your house. The food that you eat is all military ordered.
Oh, you think you're going to get grass-fed
and you
beef?
Lose all of your rights when martial law in the Constitution, it's in there, it is enacted. You lose every constitutional right. Your Bill of Rights, all of it is gone out the window, and you go through martial law. And you go to the courts and to the UCMJ. It is not a normal court. All the judges are locked down too, and the judges are military officers.
How somebody keeps telling us to stop being racist? How the fuck are we being racist?
Honestly, it's probably a troll. So
I mean, come on. It's such
I mean, the bigger question is the fact that we even have to bring up, like, why is it being allowed to be talk shit about all these races that is happening in mainstream television all over the internet, and ask that question out loud, like, why is it happening? Not saying what needs to be done or who's wrong. Just bringing it up doesn't make you a racist. I'm sorry. But
it doesn't. No. And if you really look at it again, and you apply it to the Civil War, Neptune and Aries, it is an inverted version where they want to split and divide the country. Period. End of story. Right. And if you can't talk about it and try to illuminate people that this is what's going on, and they just want to stick their fucking fingers in their ears and go, no, racist. Well, good luck. Good luck dealing with anything that's related to the truth, because you're obviously not ready to hear it. I'm sorry. That's the way it is.
Yeah. And I think because that's like a level that then goes into, what's happening with the religious aspect, because we're seeing there's tons of questions about Israel and Zionism, and it's where's all that? And it's the same transit that brought that same question back out. At the same token, you have the whole entire right wing that are mainly Catholic, right? So it's kind of an interesting kind of weird history, but for, since World War II, it was like, no, the Catholic Church wasn't involved with Hitler at all. Like, and then it's like, oh, just in the last couple of years, no, the Pope has the letters and knew about what was going on and they lied. And then you had to see, and even Francis didn't want to talk about it, but you had people inside the Vatican and the press have to like address it and say, we're sorry, we were wrong. And
Vatican II, they had to change the definition of like the Jews killed Jesus. Like that was part of Vatican II.
Right. I mean, that, right. and that's
so
where
that's been going on for a while, right? They've had to kind of reformat their relationship, counsel the churches, all that shit, right? It is the far Christian right in this country that has been set up under this idea that there's going to be a rapture, and when the rapture comes, they're going to go up into heaven, and they're going to have reclining chairs and all the Diet Coke and popcorn that they want, and they'll look down on what's happening here. All the left behinds are going to be in place. Jesus will come back, and he will give. Now, this is the weird part, right? The weird part is that Jesus will give the Jews one final time to repent. You get to repent, but if you don't repent, and if you don't take my name as Lord and Savior, I'm going to smote you. This is what these people theoretically based on the Schofield
Bible. It's the same on the other side. It's the same in the
other side has their own story,
right? It's the same on the other side. It's the same on the other side too.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about Aries and Neptune as it relates to that. Right. Aries, whose religion is more important, right? Whose religion is going to win? You know, is it going to be the Muslims? Is it going to be the Christians? Is it going to be the Jews? Aries and Neptune, right? Somebody theoretically in that configuration has to come out on top, theoretically, right? Because that's the nature of Aries.
Because 1533 Neptune Aries with Pluto Aquarius was King Henry VIII leaving the Catholic Church and defining now the English Church, right? So it was a complete split and a schism, as it was called. And so there's obviously going to be a schism in a country identifying with a religion, or even saying we're not, because what was crazy was Henry VIII said no Catholics allowed, destroyed every monastery, and actually looked at what all Ann and I on our show like a month and a half ago did, how is that connected with Doge? And it was like, what happened when Henry left the church was he sent a bunch of people to investigate what was happening at the Catholic Church at the monastery level. They had wives. There were women there that were being impregnated, the nuns. It was really bad at all the monasteries. Plus, they were taking all the money because the idea of DMV, the idea of you coming to be part of the state, all came from the monasteries in the old world, meaning you went to the church and they had a line and you had the baby, right? So, okay, that's how you got the birth, and it was recorded, and then the baptism, and then that turned into how we see our world today of like a DMV and all that. It was actually the churches that created that system, and that system was corrupt as hell. So Henry had to like take all that money back, because also the taxes that were due that you had to pay the monasteries for the Pope it was stealing from the people, and it wasn't going to the country. So, I mean, we're at that kind of moment where we're seeing that with especially the Catholics. Who was the one who sponsored the Biden crazy 7 million people to come in the country at minimum? Maybe 11
Catholic charities and their various offshoots, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. They got taken over by the Council of Churches, and were infiltrated by the Council of Churches, which took on a very socialist liberation theology ideology that started really in the 1980s, right, and has become very prevalent throughout the Catholic Church, particularly in South America.
Which is where Pope Francis was from.
Right, Argentina. Yeah.
And he was the first one of that, and he was the first Jesuit Pope, and so now we have a Jesuit dead. And so I think it's a lot bigger of a situation happening, because you have what will be in history a famous picture of Trump pushing Macron away at the Vatican and having his little meetup with Zelensky, right? But people don't realize that the bigger picture we didn't see, meaning they're all there and there's a bunch of cardinals that get to say the vote to pick the next pope. It's just like how Congress works, right? Like, the lobbyists were the world leaders at that place.
Yeah.
Right? So the world leaders are lobbying for a pope who's going to come out and either say, yay for Ukraine or yay for Russia, yay for what's happening in Hamas or yay for what's happening in Israel. All of it is all being in the background happening right now. And these cardinals are also at the same time like from different countries, and they align with different views. And Pope Francis created this really horrible, and all the popes do it, but he did it really intensely, where he had people that were at the higher ups overlooking all the other bishops and people who were looking over these people and putting out their propaganda about LGBTQ rights and so forth. And so even like a great example is Nancy Pelosi was not allowed to take communion, but when she went to the Vatican and saw the Pope, he allowed her. But in America, she wasn't allowed to because of her view on abortion, and not just view, but what she was doing about abortion. It goes against the rights that are against canon law that they agree upon in the church. So you have to where the lobbying of the highest extreme has to be the world leaders. You can't hire a lobbyist firm. You can't maybe on the lower level, like, okay, take the cardinal out, give him the girl, give him this money, give him that land, tell him that he's got tax exemption here in this country or whatever to set up the deal. But the actual people that were there and their people were all just there for that was what was happening.
So I haven't looked this up, but were there any planets retrograde when Francis was inaugurate, or whatever the fuck they call it. Were there any retrograde planets at that time?
Oh, I didn't look at that exact moment. I just know that it was 2013. And of course, that was different because there was no funeral. Because it was Benedict to quit.
He did not. This is why I'm bringing this up. He did not formally resign, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he was pushed out.
So there is a weird transference of power.
Because even the media was working against Benedict because, one, he was a German pope. Two, all the sex scandal stuff and the money scandal stuff inside the Catholic money.
He was kind of on
to clean it all up. Yeah.
He was onto it, right? Like, he wasn't Opus Dei, but he was one of these other sort of subsects inside of the Catholic Church. He wasn't Opus, but he was kind of onto it. And they got him to leave, but he never formally tendered his resignation. And so, therefore, I guess, what do you call it? The Annunciation of Francis.
They call it the crowning of the Pope.
The crowning of the Pope is as valid as the 2020 election, apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because technically there's no Annunciation because it's whatever, when the cardinals meet up, I forgot the Latin name, but that's the
when was it? When did he get
2013
crowned?
with Saturn in Scorpio and the North Node heading into Scorpio, and then 2014 was the North Node Saturn conjunction. Of course, we also had there was a bunch of stuff. 2013 it was Jupiter in the same return right now, leaving Gemini, coming into Cancer, right?
So
really,
he was the papal inauguration, or the coronation, took place on March 19th, 2013.
Oh, so that's the most amount of planets that were in Pisces in our lifetime was in, I think it was 2013 in that Pisces season when there were 7 planets in Pisces.
Okay, let's just take a quick look at that.
Yeah, if you want to share it, you can.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go into the ephemeris. I just want to see what was like happening. Okay, so March 19th. Okay, so on March 19th we have Sun in Gemini. Mercury had just gone direct, so it had been retrograde.
March 19th or
March 19th, 2013, the entire process, conclave, Mercury was retrograde. It was retrograde. It went direct on the 18th.
How many planets are in Pisces, though? I think it was insane. It was.
So Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars had just gone into Aries.
Yeah, so Jupiter, it was in Pisces before that.
Jupiter and Gemini.
Right.
Saturn was retrograde in Scorpio.
Yeah.
Saturn is the pontiff, right? Saturn is the Hierophant.
Yeah.
So there you go. Outer planets besides Saturn. Let's see. Pluto was at 11, and it looks like it was moving forward. Uranus. Neptune was in Pisces, 3 degrees. Uranus in Aries. So if you take into account Neptune and Venus and Mercury and the Sun, so that's 4 planets in Pisces, and then you have Saturn in Scorpio retrograde, squaring Uranus in Aries. So there you go.
Yeah, no, so the new moon that had happened, the new moon in Pisces, that was like the week or whatever prior to that, plus Mars was in Pisces, plus Chiron, was the largest amount of planets that we will ever see in one sign in our lives, and that was that moment leading up. It was on the
11th.
Yeah.
So it was on 3/11, which, by the way, isn't that the 3/11/213 is Fukushima, isn't it?
Yes, and that was Jupiter, or that was Uranus ingress back into Aries again. That's what kind of scares me about the outer planet zero thing is like, sure, we've seen the beginning of Neptune crossover, But
Yeah.
Uranus did that in 2010. It was in 2011 when Uranus came back again that it really created the exact moment, like to the fucking moment. Like it was like every astrologer was like freaking the fuck out, including myself, being like, this shit's real. I think that was the biggest moment I've ever felt, like where I was like telling people like this is gonna be, just pay attention on this day, and they are like, what the fuck, you know what I mean? Especially living in California and all the air sirens going off, and you know, the tsunami's gonna hit us too.
No, so I have to have a mea culpa moment. Fukushima was 3/11/2012, so it was a year before that.
2011, yeah.
2011. Yeah. So it was 2 years before that. Okay.
Well, I find it interesting because we've just been through all this crazy Pisces stuff, and again, another loaded Pisces month that we had in Pisces, and that's when the Pope entered into quote unquote sick and in the hospital. I was saying on my show with Natalie on Friday, I think that because he had more pressure than any other Pope, he can't resign. That I think they have a black pill. Just like if you're ready to go, you're ready to go.
Maybe the guy that administered that was J.D. Vance.
I know. Well,
This
how
is
weird, right?
okay.
That the Pope is like, you can't talk. You need to go to get a little training about empathy with Neptune and Aries. Kind of like, get it? You don't get it, Pope? I guess you're not following the astrology anymore. You lost your. And so the last day, okay, he's back, and then takes the pictures, and hours later he dies.
Right. So this is kind of weird. So you have J.D. Vance, who is like one of the last. I think he's like the last person to see.
He is the last. Yeah.
Last person to see the Pope, right? Okay. Then he goes to India.
And the Pakistan, India.
After he leaves
crisis.
India, Pakistan and India go to hell, right? Like they start fighting. Like what is going on with JD?
And the last time they did that was 2020. I remember when it was the middle of COVID in 2020, and I'm like, well, they don't care about COVID there because they're fucking fighting at the border, you know?
Right. It's true.
But it also was a threat of nuclear war on both sides.
Yeah, it's like, Pakistan nuclear. How did that happen? Like I was talking about that this morning. Like, how did that happen? How did Pakistan somehow get nuclear fucking weapons?
They're kind of like a North Korea, I guess. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
You know, another proxy country.
So here's the weird part, right? So J.D. Vance, who's a Leo, double Leo that we know.
Yeah.
Right? Double Leo goes to see the Pope. He's the last person to see the Pope. Do you know who I think the last person to see Nelson Mandela was?
Joe Biden?
Obama.
Oh. Because remember, Joe Biden said he got locked up and all that shit. No. I know.
Obama. So when you look at Obama and J.D. Vance, there are like really weird parallels to them. They're both Leos, right? They're both raised by their grandparents. They both have different names other than their birth names.
Yeah, so J.D. Vance has changed his name twice.
Right. And Barack Obama was Barry Soetoro.
Right.
I mean, let's be clear about that. He took his, and what was he before that? I don't know. But so they both have different names. They both write books about their lives, right? They're both kind of raised by their grandparents.
They're both senators. They were both senators, and they were only in for one term.
Exactly. They're only in for one term. Their books become bestsellers. Somehow Obama winds up at Harvard. J.D. Vance winds up at Yale, right? They're like running these weird parallel tracks. Then J.D. Vance winds up at the Sibley Austin law firm that Obama worked at in Chicago. Like, who's writing this script, right? And they're the last people that see these world leaders, these major world leaders. Like, David, I can't make heads or tails of it, but when you look at all that stuff in parallel, it's really fucking weird.
Well, and when last time we did a show was with Evan, and that I was bringing up like, and I have, my prediction might not come true, right? Like I put all my marbles on the spring of 2025. Trump will be replaced by J.D. Vance, and the reason why Trump wins the election is because of that. And so when I saw this Pope thing, I went, "Oh, that's a sign." Or even when I look at the astrology over this next couple of weeks, it's like Jupiter's coming to be on top of the sun of of Trump. You've got Mars that's in Leo, but in the 12th house for Trump that's going to conjunct his Pluto, while Uranus crosses over Algol this weekend, while this Venus-Neptune conjunction happens.
And Trump has Algol on the midheaven.
Right, while that means Mars is heading toward J.D. Vance's sun.
So I've been talking about this, that mid-May we needed to pay attention to this Mars transit in Trump's 12th house. Like you and I have talked about it before, right?
We did with Evan. We talked. I mean, all three of us were like, "Yeah, this shit ain't gonna go the way people think," you know.
So there's also going to be a Mars return 2 years from now, right? So that would be 2026, and it would be sort of the lead-in to the 2028 election. So there's going to be another Mars transit in Trump's 12th house.
Yeah, and a longer one, because this Mars retrograde because he has an interception in his chart in Cancer and Capricorn, his technical, 12th house is Leo, right? So this Mars retrograde kind of went in there for a second and it just went back. It wasn't really like the Cancer stuff. He has that Saturn there, his Venus there, his Mercury, and that's his 11th house. But that 12th house, if you look at, he really wasn't after he went through the shows that he did. Like, I looked at that last Mars retrograde that went through Leo, and Trump was not really kind of anywhere. And then he kind of pops back out and does the show, The Apprentice, a little bit. But then it's really about the run to presidency. It's not really about the show anymore. The problem now, I think, in Trump's case is, is Jupiter really his friend here? I think a lot of people give Jupiter too much emphasis. I think the Jupiter trine to his Jupiter over the last, months has been his blessing. But I think when it comes to his sun, his opposition to his lunar eclipse, you're seeing Mars in a bad position for him. And on top of it all, you have J.D. Vance who's sitting right on top of his Pluto.
Right on top of his Pluto.
And you have Uranus for this weekend crossing over Algol, and the last time we saw that, of course, that was with Mars, was July and the assassination attempt. But this is going to be with now the moon in Leo making a square to the sun, and at the same token, we're coming into Pluto retrograding on Sunday, which is beginning its opposition to his natal Pluto. And this is the first time Pluto's going to retrograde and go, I'm not going back into Capricorn, because 2023 went back into Capricorn. 2024, this is different. This is a Pluto that's like, I am staying here. So now, like all the Pluto Leo generation, they're the ones screaming the loudest about 401ks right now, right? Because their whole life is based off 401ks and Social Security. But like this Pluto retrograde's like, sorry, Neptune and Aries, sorry, that ain't really the future. And so the beginnings of that fear and that stuff is going to be, I think, hit. But I don't know. I put that prediction out for a long time. And that's why I said the spring, to give it that full 90 days, because there's a lot happening in the 90 days. Because I really do feel like the new energy of the summer is the cardinal energies, and it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah. And so, it is different.
And then that's where it's like, you also look at, going back to kind of the beginning of this convo, it's like, where is this going with how the economy is, like robots, like AI, like you have Elon Musk who just sold Twitter to his XAI company, and then the paper was just sold at the banks this Monday that was the loan money for him to buy X. They sold it 98 cents on the dollar. So all the banks lost money, but they wanted to get rid of all that paper that was attached to the loan originally. And they just all the banks just sold all that. And so you think of like Atlas, that robot, they just, for the first time, made it self-sufficient, meaning it's not plugged in.
You mean Optimus? Is that what it's called? Or
I think it's called Atlas.
Atlas, okay.
Right? It's that one that runs and jumps, and I would not want to be in a room with that motherfucker.
Yeah.
That thing they just turned on, self-anonymous, like without any control at all, like no wires connected to it, no pre-programmed shit, and started to see what it would do. And then you look at like the crippling of the economy, especially warehouses, freight. And then Trump just said that if you don't know how to speak English, you can't be a truck driver. Well, I mean, I'm one of those people like, okay, that makes sense. But at the same time, who's just going to go be truck drivers right now?
I think there would be people who'd be willing to be truck drivers.
I
I'm
know.
not sure.
I mean, sure there are, but like you have to go to the truck driving school.
Yeah, I mean that can be handled in about 6 months at the max.
Right, but
I think
if you get rid of all the people right now in the middle of this.
Well, here's what I think the complaint is. There are people that have been trucking for a very long time, and they're being undercut by people who are not from here. And not only are they not from here, but the standards for them to get their their CDL or whatever license are much lower. And, unfortunately,
and they're paying more to the DOT.
Because they're not from here, there's also a greater risk of, like danger on the highway because not being able to read signs, not being able to communicate, right? So, and if you really listen to people that are truckers, independent truckers, they're barely able to stay alive, right?
No,
and so a lot of the corporate truckers, which you can still make basically a living wage, a lot of these guys are getting replaced too. So I understand where Trump is coming from.
That's why I said I understand it, but it is a weird moment because a lot of trucking companies are being fucked over because the freight isn't moving off the boats. They're keeping them on the boats to save from tariffs for the ones that had the money and the know-how with the longshoremen to be like, hey, just keep it in a dock for right now. So you have a bunch of goods just sitting. You have a bunch of goods, and then you have these are Chinese ships that, the way that the laws work, like you've got to receive it in if you're not a Walmart or, of a higher up. But then also the trucking companies are losing a lot of money right now because the freight's not moving. And then you have a situation where you have 67% of Gen Z that want to be influencers, 7 million men who aren't in the job market by choice. So contractors, plumbers, you name it. Like my HVAC guy's in his 60s, and he can't find anybody. And he puts ads out all the time.
Yeah, so you bring up a really interesting point, and it is the decrease of institutional knowledge, right? Because there are people that are older and they know how to do shit, they know how to get things done, like the HVAC guy or whatever, right? And these people are going away, right? They are going to either age out, retire, and or die. And to your point, the replacements for those people, there's not a group that's clamoring to take over those positions, right? No. And to the degree that they can bring other people from outside the country and try to get them up to speed in order to get that institutional knowledge, that's proving to be like not really working.
No.
Right? So what do you do when you run into the end of institutional knowledge with legacy systems? You tear it all down. You tear it all down.
Or it just all tears itself down. Really, that's what's.
And then you have Uranus and Gemini, Pluto and Aquarius, Neptune and Aries, absolutely no Earth until we get into Saturn and Taurus right around 2030. Hello, Agenda 2030.
Right.
Like here is the beginning of your reset, right? New technology, new legacy systems, new automation. Doesn't have to be run by a bunch
value. So like, it's not about money the same way you think about it, or even crypto. It's some other monetary value.
Some other monetary thing. This has always been the plan, right? The plan was to create centralized decentralization.
Right. Controlled decentralization. The glimpse of independence when really you have no independence. The cookies of even when you have your IP blocker on, sorry, they know. They know.
I mean, if you look at it, like for 4 years, Trump had an opportunity to sign off on the infrastructure stuff, and he never did. Right? He never went deep. They don't want to.
Well, even the people under Biden and the Congress with Republicans that signed off on it, I mean, out of all people, it was Jon Stewart who just did, a month ago, 2 months ago, the whole investigation about the broadband bill, part of it, right? It's like $63 billion that they haven't built.
It's a total scam. Total scam.
It's a total scam, and it's impossible. You have to go through 15 different meetings proving this, writing reports, environmental. It was intentionally meant to fail, and then the money just up, and we can allocate it to somewhere else.
Yeah. I was going to a lot of city council meetings when that was being bandied about, because live in a semi-rural area, and it was part of part 2 of the American Rescue Plan. It was sort of
right.
And every little city says, oh yeah, we'll take it. Well, you're going to take the money, but there's going to be strings attached. You just can't use it
right
the way that you want to. Right now, you're going to have theoretically the federal government who's in charge
everything.
of
everything,
right.
every part, and how it has to be done, and what you have to do other things that aren't even related to it in order to do
That's
it.
right. That's right. And who is going to own the wire? Right. Who is going to be able to define the terms and conditions of what you can say across that wire? Oh, it's the people that gave you the money in order to lay it down. Right. This is really what this was all about. And yet none of it has transpired.
Or we lost our true autonomous free internet because the FCC got involved under the Biden administration to take over the internet.
Yeah. Well,
and,
that started with Obama. That started with Obama.
Well, but it didn't get implemented to where the whole oversight now of the internet is the FCC by Biden just last year, right? It was what? Where you had the FCC heads writing letters saying that they don't even want to do this, right? That's the weirder part. But you're right. Who controls the wire? Well, the government now. And then also, this is why you're seeing this, fight for censorship on a different level now, where it's we just will cut off the algorithm or we'll slow your internet down, which is against the whole part of why the whole bill was about, making fast internet for people. It's you say the wrong thing, the AI knows, it throttles down, it shifts an algorithm with AI. And the FCC's overview of it is probably well, you're still getting the same stream of data,
Right. So all that stuff
that's
happened.
really the Uranus Gemini stuff is going to be all about AI, data, computers, quantum.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then banking and crypto, because the biggest fear of both sectors is quantum computing. Well, Microsoft 2 months ago announced that they made a chip that's a quantum computer. And then you have quantum computing that just went on the internet last week for the first time. So if a quantum computer can come in, all of the encrypted codes for all of our banking system and crypto could be cracked within a millisecond. So that's why I just think it's hilarious, because the Venus-Neptune conjunction of 1862, the one we're under this weekend, begins this process where they are going to desperately just float everything they can to throw more monopoly money in different ways, make you feel the Bitcoin reserve, and we're going to attach it to that, the US dollar. That would just be fun paper money for a couple years that people kind of use, but it's just burying itself down a darker hole, because really this is where, it's desperation moment. And it's not the Fed's fault either, as far as because the rates aren't being dropped. It's more they already are part of this whole problem. It doesn't matter if it's up or down. They've already screwed it over, and they're buying. The money's parked at the Fed, then the Fed parks money at the banks, and they do that back and forth, and they go back and forth. And the bond market is being shredded right now. The treasuries are being dumped. So, that's where it becomes play money that comes out now. We're already in play money. So it's
we've been in play money for a while.
We're going to see play money that's creating play money.
I mean, I think when you step back and zoom out from the financial perspective, and then looking at the lack of infrastructure that was, passed over by Biden and not addressed by Trump, right? We're really coming to sort of the end of a cycle, the end of a wave, right? We've reached it. And everything from this, kind of historical moment moving forward is about this implosion. And I keep coming back to Uranus and Taurus, which is in its detriment, and it is the destruction of form. Like that's really what Uranus and Taurus is about. It's the destruction of form, and soon to be replaced by a new version of Uranus and Gemini, and it's going to be a completely different system. Like we are in the throes of a reset. Now, are they going to be able to pull this thing off and pull it off in a reasonable amount of time? I don't know, right? Because in order to do it and to gracefully kind of leap across the abyss, you're going to have to come up with something a bit more than, 15-minute cities, right? You're going to have to come up with a whole new way of manufacturing, a whole new way of automation, and to your point, a whole new way of valuation around what people get out of it. And maybe they can do it. Maybe they can ramp this thing up. And the next thing you know, we've got bye-bye legacy systems, and we've got this reset that they've been talking about for a long time, and it's all predominated by the outer planets. But I just don't think they can do it. I don't think they can hit land, right? By 2030, Saturn and Taurus, Agenda 2030, really, which is the time that they put aside for I think they're behind on everything.
They are.
Right.
They're going to plan F now, and now they're crossing out F and going to G.
Yeah.
And then the other part too is like with Uranus and Gemini coming, it becomes kind of like who's got the coolest idea? Because it reminds me of like you have like, okay, Oppenheimer, I can make a bomb. But then on the other side in Germany, you have von Braun who's like making the V2 rocket and coming up with this idea of like sending huge rockets with bombs that'll go take out London and take out the United States. And it's like those ideas are so powerful that the United States take them and go, come with us.
Yeah, come on over here, Werner.
Right?
We got some.
So it becomes kind of like who's got the craziest idea that everybody will want, Uranus.
Yeah.
Becomes like your safety net for money, for protection, for anything. And it doesn't matter what country you're in or what's happening, because the right person that'll come to give you a hand is right there waiting for you with first class tickets.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that brings up kind of the UAP, UFO stuff. Like they just recently I don't know if you just saw the part of this whole like exposing all the truth, right? Like the National Archives, they just dropped like the 1940s through like 60s stuff, right? Like pictures of flying saucers, the presidential binder that JFK had saying classified flying saucers, like all that kind of stuff. So basically saying like, okay, whether some of the letters too said we dropped them off at this one property in Kansas, like it's kind of like, okay, so we were making some, there's some that were not, but it was also interesting to read all the letters that were coming from citizens and how you wouldn't be able to see back in the 50s and 60s like how many people were writing letters, like how now you might see amount like, oh, there's 2,000 comments underneath the White House thing or something. The amount of letters about flying saucers were overwhelming, that they were having to tell Truman, they were having to tell JFK. When he was a senator, JFK was the one who was actually asking inside the skiff at that time, like, what's going on? And all that just got brought out because his constituents were asking. And I think that's where we're at this weird thing, because there's so many fucking weird situations happening in the skies. Like, look what happened just with the power outage that happened in Europe and then really affected, Portugal. Like, what?
And Spain, Portugal.
Are we at this true Pluto Aquarius moment of, is it a combo of, the skies are ruled by Aquarius, Pluto?
Yeah.
It pulls things down, and that's where it starts to bring up, like, why has everybody been building bunkers and going underground? If you look at Pluto, it's 22 degrees and a half south in declination. This year, it will go out of bounds, and it's not going to do that the next time it comes around.
That's right. It does.
When Pluto came north in declination in 1930, when it was found, that's the only reason why it was found, because we could finally see it. You can't see it right now with a telescope. You have to use probes, right? That's where this is like the inverse, where it's like everything's about seeing in the world what's happening. Oh, we're seeing an explosion. We're seeing this. We're seeing an atom bomb. We're seeing all these things. We're seeing the growth of the modern world that we still consider today, which I would call the legacy modern world, which is which we're still running on.
Yeah.
But now it's this underground thing. Oh, you mean to tell me that they have been preparing for extinction-based events, or maybe a fucking, whether it's a psyop or a real alien invasion, or especially the pole shift with all the solar stuff, and also the micronova stuff, that they're starting to realize that the sun every 12,000 years does a little mini micronova to shut off all the static electricity, and it wipes this place out. And then you have all of the other stars in our galaxy and all of that energy, the dust and all the particles that are coming from all the other stars and all these great black holes, all that stuff that's hitting us. So they know something, and that's where I think the bigger question of everything really is, that I can't trust any of these people on left, right, religious, anything, because everybody's parroting, when it's like, the biggest secret is, why are all these people building underground bunkers that are the biggest celebrities? Because that's your closest to, you know, kind of being able to see there's something else, right? It's like Mark Zuckerberg, Kim Kardashian, Jeff Bezos in Texas. It's not about Blue Origin. That's all fucking fraud, right? It's more about, why does he have an atomic clock built in West Texas? Why does he have like the largest dug bunker that was publicly known, right?
Well, this gets into the whole subject of resets. And we're not talking Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum resets.
Yeah, who's gone on the same day that the Pope's gone.
Right. Yeah, exactly. These are resets where civilizations are wiped, right? And you see the remnants of these things, and they look like melted bricks.
Yeah.
You know, this is really what you're talking about. And it also feels to me like those resets are kind of like Men in Black memory wipes too. Like we just have no idea about, you know, what these things were. I mean, you know, I spent a lot of time, you know, going down the Tartarian rabbit hole, and I do think there's a there, by the way. And
for sure. I mean, even like at Taj Mahal, like, what's like, does it go deeper there?
Yeah.
You know,
right, like you look at some of this stuff and go, what? You did this then? How did you do that?
Or that idea about the pyramids, that those guys took that scan and said those chambers go all the way down. And, you know, it's hard to say if they're right or not, but I think we should be having some archaeological scientists and stuff go look.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's where, when you talk about that, when you start to bring that language into discussion, that's where, you know, when you say micronova, that's where my head goes, right? Because we've had these resets. We see the remnants of these civilizations from the past. How long ago? That's to be determined. And when we have these outer planets that are not rooted to anything connected to the Earth
at all, and they're moving into signs that don't have any earth or water at all. We're moving into air and fire.
Right. And what happens when you get air and fire? It is fucking flammable.
Yeah, it is.
It is really flammable.
And that's actually what JD Vance is. He's a double Leo with the moon in Libra.
Yeah, he's flammable.
But also Trump, right? I mean, he's fire, double fire, or triple fire, or double fire with air too. So, you know, and that's what's kind of interesting.
The moon in Libra smooths everything out for JD Vance, doesn't it? Smooths it all out.
Yeah, how he smooths his eyeliner and became a Catholic in 2019. That's the other weird thing, is that he was like an atheist, and then in 2019 became a Catholic. And then it's really weird that the Catholic thing just kind of, I think, really makes people look at, because there's been so much focus on Zionism and what's happening in Israel, that it's like, you also got to look at the other players too, that the influence and what they're doing in the media too, and whether there's a hand between both of those, and there's also fights for hands that are not between those. It's
Candace Owens converted.
Right, and she's the best example of, like, I agree with a lot of what she says, but then she'll just go on a fucking tangent that just makes her look really bad about pushing the Catholicism aspect of it all. And then you have Jordan Peterson, who's then throwing the word psychotic on top of people questioning certain things, but also has some points about when the right's going to go too far, right? Like, it's like, where's that boundary? So then he got canceled, but it's kind of ironic that he doesn't say it, but his wife converted to Catholicism. So, you have kind of this, like, I know everybody's talking about all the Zionists out there, but it's kind of like, well, you also have all the Catholics out there, right? So, and then it's weird because in America, Trump made this whole new, part of an executive order of like the defender of faith kind of position with that Patty or whatever that girl is. She actually like speaks in tongues and all that shit, but it's like to defend Christianity.
Paula White.
So Paula White. So turning now, if you talk about Christianity in any kind of way, turning it kind of like if it was anti-Semitic, it's anti-Christian is the same kind of theology idea. Yeah, while they're attacking astrologers and putting it out there and saying Katy Perry's talking astrology, not astronomy, because she went up in the Blue Origins thing. And when she didn't even bring up astrology, but like, kind of making us connected to the most extreme left, which is exactly, ironically, what Hitler did to the astrologers and connected them with the Jews. And that's the other thing about what's happening with the Catholic thing, is I think there has to be a fair balanced look, as you now have Catholics that are being brought up at the same time and what they're going to start saying, because you've had them on shows bring up how bad astrology is. The pastors have brought that up. But it's interesting, too, because there's different forms of Christianity. You have Mormons who believe in speaking in tongues. You have in Judaism, there's definitely more liberal ones that are into the mystical Kabbalah and allow that. But then there's some in the Talmud that don't, and all these, right? So it starts getting like really messy. But at the end of the day, that's where it's weird, is there's no mysticism allowed in the Catholicism world, but they throw. So I think it's kind of weird because they do.
The Catholic world is weird because they will allow for mysticism to occur with their saints, right? Begrudgingly, by the way. So there is a history of mysticism in the Catholic Church. But by and large, to your point, in fact, most mainstream Western Christian religions do not promote mysticism.
No.
Unless you consider the Holy Spirit speaking in tongues mysticism. I wanted to ask you a question about Aries and Neptune. And as you were bringing this up and you were talking about all these different religions, right? Like, do you think that between now and the end of this Neptune Aries cycle, there will be a unification of one religion, one being Aries, Neptune being religion and faith, a one world religion, which is the way that you bring this whole thing together, right? You put it all under one roof, and that roof will be the pinnacle, right? It will be like the crowning achievement of the new church, Aries and Neptune. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so last time Saturn, Neptune met in Aries at 0 degrees, because you have to look, okay, that's a big deal, was the beginning of Babylon going back 6,400 years ago. So if you follow the cycles in the galactic part in the shifts, right? So we talked about a 12,000 year cycle with the sun, and obviously kind of weird dystopian events that happen to Earth, not by men, but by divine nature in a way, right? But you have now like the halfway moment of that, with Babylon being the beginnings of mystical traditions that every story of every religion comes back to Babylon and astrologers. But, it's kind of this new spirituality that I think will be a little bit more open. I do think that there is going to be a moment where people we're going to have something that's dug up, or some sort of thing that really does kind of prove that everything's all connected back to Babylon, right? And that's like the big fear from Judaism to Christianity to everything. Like, the Babylon's this horrible place. Ironically, they're all summoning Babylon 24/7. So the tower of religion is really the Babylon tower. And if you study a lot of John Dee's work, what he got into after his deep astrology work with Edward Kelly, and when they were getting into all of creating their ciphers and stuff, like, he has a crazy Babylon tower cipher that you have to decode, that actually, of all people, Aleister Crowley during the Golden Dawn decoded. And it's literally the whole zodiac and everything, and watching this whole Babylon tower that actually was from just a 2D piece of paper and cipher, that if you actually create it, and all the tarot cards and all this crazy shit that creates it, And what I think is happening is all the religions are reaching the top of the Babylon to the Tower card moment. All the religions are going to be there, and now you're going to just see all the corruption that's been there, because the real corruption is the lies and the man-made lies that were created for people to follow and believe that were mystical that weren't mystical. So I think it's more about people kind of like schisming themselves from religion. And I think people are not going to want like religious institutions, which keeps your First Amendment right. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to force it on anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has like certainly a lot of room to play out.
I mean, it has a lot of room to play out. You're right. It's not going to just be overnight that everybody just decides, because that's the biggest heroine in the universe, being religious.
Right. What I'm getting is like one ring to rule them all, one tower to rule them all. Right. That's what I'm getting with Neptune and Aries. Right. There's this synthesis that takes place, and these, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism and the various offshoots, that they somehow get synthesized into one faith, like one faith under Neptune and Aries, that singularity of religious expression. And I have been thinking for a long time that faith is Baha'i. You know about Baha'i?
Yes.
And Baha'i is the fusion of all three of those religions, right? All three of the religions come together in Baha'i. And I just have this sneaking suspicion that as we go through what I would consider the crises of what the outer planets are going to, and by the way, I just want to be clear, there's still lots of wiggle room for individuality in all of this. Right. So I
think that's the main point, though, is I think people are going to have to stop following all this stuff, and even their social medias, because you're going to have to find that within you. That's what the whole experience of awakening and spirituality is this is going to be not a test anymore. I hate that term. It's just like, this is what it's about. It's about you and you getting through this through your connection and your way. It's not about
Aries and Neptune.
What's the church tell me to do? What do these people tell me to do? Like, that's where Pluto is going to expose you as being not that innovative at all, and not being able to really move forward, because Pluto, it does expose the corruption of everything. Of course, it's more corrupt kind of Capricorn style, because it's Capricorn and it's systems and it's governments and it's control. Right. But Aquarius is like, oh, you're not an individual at all. Like, you're actually a fucking sheep following the fucking herd. Like, that's all you do. Like,
That's getting
mix that with Neptune and Aries. That's exactly what happened in the 1530s. Was, like, at the end of the day, Martin Luther won. He went up against the Pope. He went up against it. Even Henry VIII made paper and actually wrote it himself, and said, and then he was found defender of the faith by the Catholic Church. And then fucking years later, it's like, fuck this. I'm getting an annulment of my marriage, and I'm marrying the French fucking little biscuit. I already fucked her sister, but now I'm going to fuck her, and she's my wife now. That's Neptune, Aries, Pluto, and Aquarius. And I'm going my own way, and we're creating our own church, and it never has stopped. What's weird, though, is that last year with that Pluto, whenever Charles III had come in, guess who brought the true cross, which is a lie, to fucking bridge the Catholic Church and the Church of England back together? Was Charles III having his annunciation, right? Or his, whatever we call it.
Inauguration.
Yeah. There's a proper English term, but yeah. They brought that, the Catholic Church brought that for his annunciation. So that was the first time in 500 years that those two churches talked.
So Sir Thomas More, who was opposed to Henry's divorces.
Who was like, he wrote Utopia as well, which is actually extremely utopian.
And he's an Aquarian. Sir Thomas More was an Aquarian, right? So he was a contrarian. He wasn't going to go along with.
He was the Zelensky of that time.
Well, he was like, "Hey, dude, I'm not going to give you I can't do this, right? This is like part of the vow that I took, and you're going to break with the church. And I found it was interesting that an Aquarian wouldn't go along with a break with the church, right? That he took the contrarian position with Henry. And
and he was super deeply involved with Cardinal Wolsey, who was the English cardinal, who was fighting for position to become pope in a conclave by switching from the deals with France to Spain, and then at the same time was asked to deliver the papers against Martin Luther to the Catholic Church, and got really, and once he met the Pope and once he met all the cardinals there, it became too personal, right? And so that was part of it, and it was like, plus Henry at that point was like proving the monasteries are bad, and that's what happens with religion, is like, you could say, like, look at the Catholic Church, for example. It's weird. Society, we're allowed to talk about how many boys they've raped, how many atrocities they've done, but when it comes to what's happening with Zionism, you can't talk about any of that stuff. Like, so who's controlling that? Sometimes I think it's not as much the Zionists as the Catholics who kind of control it to make it to where they can make it where they want, but I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a lot more complicated than we think. I don't think it's so cut and dry. It's just these people only. I think there's this higher top thing, because in Masons, you drop your religion and then you start learning about mysticism and Kabbalah and Catholic mysticism, and it builds up. And once you pass 33 degrees, it's like you go up to this other tier, and we're dealing with these people that are above this other tier that are all controlling these things right now.
Which I talked about on Sunday night. It's interesting you bring that up. So let's bring this back to this Neptune and Aries concept, which is kind of one ring, one tower, one religion to rule them all, or you find it out on your own vis-a-vis Aries and your individual spirit and your connection to God, connection to creation at a primary level, right? Because Aries doesn't think about things. It's, Sagittarius will ponder the universe, right? Sagittarius will get lost in, the philosophy of everything. But that's not how Aries rolls. Aries is immediate. Aries is now. Aries is the idea that we embody this Neptunian spirit, right? Which is the spirit of God, the spirit of the Most High, the spirit of creation. This is what Jesus theoretically talked about. That you didn't need a middleman. We don't have a pope right now.
Right.
There is no middleman. We're in this really interesting territory historically and cosmologically, where it's like, maybe we don't need that. Like, maybe we don't need these John Hagees, or, maybe we don't need, the Rebbe Schneersons of the world. But what we really need is that connection that each and every one of us has to pay attention to and really have to cultivate. And I think that's what we're going to be dealing with Neptune and Aries. This kind of, this synthesis of all these sort of Abrahamic desert religions all under one roof, right? And look, we got rid of all the strife and all the conflict, and we have literally a one world religion where we've all agreed upon it, and this is how we're going to survive moving forward, because it got really ugly there for a while. So now we figured it out, right? We're just going to make it all one. Or you get the individual model. It's like, I don't need that. And I feel like this is an interesting discussion to have with Neptune and Aries.
I agree. I think what's funny as I'm thinking about all that is like, I wonder what China would think about that, right? So it reminds me of like the West's issues are fucking retarded stuff everywhere. The West has gone full blown retarded.
Oh, they laugh at us.
Right, from religion to our military to our money to the way our people are to our obesity to shooting ourselves up with fucking just ridiculous chemicals all the time.
With their drugs,
but that's fentanyl. Like, I mean, like literally, they're just looking at it. We've gone full blown retarded. So I look at them and I go, oh, okay. That's, I think, going to be the big thing where it's like, is the West's last ditch effort with this Neptune Aries going to be, let's all form together to go out and take that, because they have all the men who will do our plumbing for us, and then we'll build our robots for us, and they have the facilities. We'll not have to build them. It almost does kind of feel like the NATO West will try to create a war against China and take everything we got at them and take and completely do what we did and kind of, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be surprised.
Somebody said something in here is really funny. I have to read it. It's
read
about Lady Gaga. Hold on. It was really funny.
I mean, it's going to be weird to see her with Neptune and Aries. I mean, she was already weird, but with Uranus, I mean, her meat suit came out with Uranus back in 2011 and 10.
They're talking about Lady Gaga's dick.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Is it circumcised?
Is Lady Gaga cut? Anyway, it was very funny. It was about Lady Gaga having a dick. And
well, she was just at Coachella, which has turned into the most demonic, fucking crazy spiritual conjure fest of all time. Since I used to go, I used to go when I was young, when it was indie artists, but there was no such thing as like, you know, I mean, like they brought, like I got to see fucking like the biggest name was like Prince, Daft Punk, of course, but like they didn't bring like like mainstream music, you know. And now they have mainstream music for the last decade, and it's like Lady Gaga doing this summoning up of all this demonic shit and wearing all red and wearing the horns and doing it. It's like that chick's. And then what people don't know is her dad is a hardcore Republican who speaks on Fox News and shit like that. And
that doesn't surprise me.
And she's at all the fucking parties eating fucking, you know, human body cakes and shit like that. So that reminds me of just like Laurel Canyon shit, right? Yeah.
Like you know, inside the Laurel Canyon and how all these people just start showing up around 1965 in Los Angeles, and they all have these weird connections to the military, like Frank Zappa and Graham Parsons and David Crosby.
Well, you know who the biggest donor to the Clintons was the Zappa family.
The Zappas donated to the Clintons?
Big time, yeah, a lot.
Wow, that's wild. I had a dream that I was working for Frank Zappa in his restaurant and bar last week. And
How weird.
It was weird, right? And he was kind of a dick as a boss, I have to say. Right. But he was, you know, just running the restaurant on like Frank Zappa rules.
Well, I think, you know what, he had good intentions with what he was doing. I don't think he knew about all the weird shit.
I think he did. I think Frank knew a few things. I think he
well,
knew
I'll just say I'm too close to people that are family to him and all that, so I'm just gonna be like, yeah. I was trying
there's a song he writes. I forget the song, but he starts talking about, there's somebody who's working for the CIA up in the hills of Laurel Canyon. Like he's kind of dropping a little something there, right? And like, Frank, why are you bringing that up? And that's like it's like Dave McGowan didn't even like put, like Frank had gone. He was long gone before Dave McGowan started to write about this stuff. So maybe there is some connection, right? Like I think Frank knew a few things, but was he the orchestrator of the entire Laurel Canyon scene? Probably not. No. Yeah.
But I think that's where, I mean, like, you know, like if you just see, I just had seen two of my buddies that I worked at a boat dealership with. I started 21 years ago. It was April 2004. And so like one of the guys was in town. We just had lunch, right? And, you know, we've known each other for 21 years. And I'm just like, wow, man, where are they going with that? Oh, and he's from Tennessee. And so and he's a California guy, right? He's the long-haired fucking cool dude, fucking, you know. And he's like, dude, and I've noticed this in all the music, all the rock music, all the music's moved. Like LA, there is no more entertainment.
No, it's Nashville. They moved everything to Nashville.
So like the other kind of weird thing, because I like to hit all kind of weird points. It's like everybody says, oh, the Jews own Hollywood. It's like, well, actually, no, 65% is the Chinese own Hollywood, right? So the Chinese own your Netflix, the Chinese own, right? Like, so it's kind of like, okay, the Chinese are the ones canceling American films in their country right now. So it's kind of like, wait, what? And then you see all the music's in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Right? Except LA and New York are, let's call them the basic, but we're going to push you really hard and you'll be at the Oscars, people. Like, those are the only people that are in the entertainment scene that's left in LA. And now you see actors kind of coming out of nowhere, like, yeah, you can't do work here. You had Adam Schiff, who just out of nowhere came out on fucking Bill Maher last Friday and was saying, we need to, in California, incentivize entertainment to be back, and we've overtaxed. And I was in San Francisco, and all my shit got taken out of my car. And then I went to the CVS, and I tried to buy something, and I tried to find the lady, and everything's locked up. And then I just asked her how she was doing, because it was like 10 o'clock at night, and she's like, fucking sucks. These fucking Democrats are pieces of shit. And so you have Adam Schiff now trying to fucking about face and act like he's for the people, and admitting that they suck as a party.
Well, they have to reclaim the middle ground somehow.
They're all reclaiming a middle ground. Then you're seeing Hollywood celebs trying to reclaim middle ground. You see a lot of this weird like switch in a lot of ways. So
so let me tell you how fast it happens. I'm going to give you a very concrete example about how fast these people pivot and move back to the middle. On Friday and Saturday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they had the NFL draft, and Shedeur Sanders fell in the draft. He felt like a rock, right? 5th round. Gets picked by the Cleveland Browns. There were people all weekend long who were accusing the NFL and all of these NFL teams of being racist because Shedeur Sanders was not picked, and he was, being punished because he was, he knew who he was, and he wasn't gonna, kiss ass with any NFL GM. No, really, what happened was he was a medium quarterback, and he had a pain in the ass father who has Sun in Leo, Jupiter and Leo conjunction. Hello, Dion.
Right, exactly.
Right? Dion loves him some Dion, right? By the way, Shedeur is an Aquarius, opposite sign. So Shedeur, if he was really smart, he would break away from Dion, right? Because Dion, he really damaged his like time in the draft. But here's what's happened: all these people who were crying about Deion Sanders 3 days ago, I swear to God, David, they're pivoting. Now all of a sudden it's kind of like, well, there was this and there was
praise
that.
the Nepo baby. It's okay.
Well, they're just saying, well, maybe the NFL GMs were right, or like I've never seen these guys backtrack so quickly to scramble back to the middle again. And it's like it's almost schizophrenic, to be honest with you, because 3 days ago, they're pounding their chest, Shedeur Sanders is George Floyd, and then now 3 days later, you're seeing this backtrack. It's just so weird.
Okay, what's that ESPN guy's name who's being fucking? He just got off ESPN. He was the guy who interviewed
Shannon Sharp.
Right, and that whole situation, and how they show when he was with I'm blanking on names right now. Who came out last year and everything's coming out in Cat Williams at 2024.
Cat Williams was on Shannon's show.
Right, and he was the one who said, and I won't be with any white girls ever, because they'll be taking you down real quick. Right? So obviously he knew. But that's kind of goes back to the beginning of the kind of stuff you and I are bringing up in the culture. Like, it's okay to say that, I guess, if you're black, but, right? And so now you have people being like, well, for sure, it's because she's white. And then, but I don't know. It's a case where it's like, okay, I've heard some of the recordings, and it looks like, yeah, she sent things like daddy and shit like that. But then you have him also like, I'm going to choke you out. And then it gets kind of in the weeds of like, was it sexual? Was it not? Was it, you know what I mean? It's one of those things. But the bigger part is it's taking part in this like societal aspect of where it's like, well, if you're a black man and you're with a white girl, like you're automatically like, you're going to be fucked over. You're going to be suckered. Right.
Well, I mean,
really,
I think that's playing out, but then we're getting cultural here now, whatever this passes for culture. Then you have Bill Belichick.
Aquarius.
Bill Belichick, right? Bill Belichick.
Oh, and his girlfriend. I know, yeah.
Aries Bill Belichick right? Who, when he would have a press conference, wouldn't utter more than 25 words.
In a sweatshirt with fucking with cutoffs,
right?
Even in the middle of the summer.
And now he's got middle of winter on the cutoffs, right? So now he's got this. What's her name? Jordan Hudson. Is that her name?
Yeah,
I think that's her name, right? She's 24, and he's
pushing 70s, right? He's like,
he went through the Saturn opposition, and what he should have done is just fucking walked away from football. See, this is what happens when you have the Saturn opposition, and you're supposed to flip your life, and you don't. Right. You just think you can just keep going on doing the same thing. This is what happened to Tom Brady. 44, hits the Saturn opposition, wins the Super Bowl. He had a deal with Giselle. I'm done. Oh, he went back on the deal. Oh, well, Tom, you had your Saturn opposition. You're supposed to do something different. You didn't. You went back to the Bucks.
Well, I'm kind of close to that whole thing, but he also lied to her and said, "Oh, I'm spiritual." I remember it all came out that she's a witch using astrology and all that stuff. Right. And so he lied to her by being like, "Oh, I'm totally into it," but would talk shit about it.
Well, he lied to her about everything apparently
because
he said I'm gonna leave, but he doesn't leave. It's 44. He stays on. And what happens?
Yeah, well,
the Bucks fucking suck.
He picked Florida because she hated the cold. She put up with it for so long. She never wanted to be there.
He had a great year. They won a Super Bowl, right? That's just before the Saturn opposition. Tom, you're done. Move on. Do something different. He couldn't, right? He was like still hung up on some fucking form of like late adolescence. I'm sorry. That's, I got to have one more year. Well, it didn't work out so well, right? And so this is what happened with Belichick, Saturn opposition. Bill, why don't you just, get a boat and go hang out on your boat and hang out with your Oh, no, I got to go coach again. I got to go coach North Carolina.
Eat your clam chowder with your sweatshirt on.
Right. But now you've got this 24-year-old who's in an interview with CBS saying,
I know.
we won't talk about that.
She's directing both of them in a conversation that she's not in, saying, we're not talking about that, and like aggressive too. Not like, oh, like, hey, I don't want to talk about it. Like, we ain't talking about that shit.
No, she is running the show.
I know. I've never seen that in an interview in my life.
And this is Bill fucking Belichick, Mr. Aries, which is Patriot way, right?
And he was not a nice coach. The reason why they won is that motherfucker was hardcore. He was not nice to people.
No.
He wasn't even giving high fives.
No. That was not the Patriot
in order to get any kind of niceness from him, it would be like a praise by like a smile, like you did good. That was the best you could get from that guy.
So I like to look at things from this like twinning perspective, right? Just like we were talking about with J.D. Vance and Obama and the weird parallels. You got the weird parallels with Shannon Sharpe and Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Right. Both football players, one's black, one's white. Right.
Yep.
And,
oh, wow.
And,
yep.
And
a young girl.
And young women who have gotten into their worlds. And I guarantee you this is not going to end well for Bill Belichick with this.
No, he didn't look that comfortable in the interview at all.
Not at all. No.
And whatever it is that they don't want to know, I'm sure it's probably, oh God, you know what I mean? It's some connection.
Yeah, people maybe not know what we're talking. So the guy, I think it's on CBS, he asked the question, so how did you two meet? Well, first of all, she's not in the interview.
Yeah, she's sitting on the other side, like in the booth. They're at like a restaurant. They'll, that's what every kind of news organization, they'll pick like a cool place that looks cool. And then they set up two fucking director's chairs. And it's just the host and Bill Belichick talking. And then for some reason, he brings up, so how did you meet, your girl or whatever? And she just screams from like 15 feet away out of the thing, like, we're not going to talk about how we met at all. Just like,
we're not talking about
and they have another camera to get her saying it.
It's just, I've never seen anything like that. Like never. Yeah. And so again, these two weird situations kind of strangely parallel, although Bill Belichick never said he
I would even say a third, because there was the weird Melania Trump kind of out, Melania showing up and him, they were posting, oh, look at how affectionate he is. He puts his arm around her. That's it. Like, I'm married.
Belichick,
if I didn't, no, Trump and Melania this week about the funeral, right? Like, it was like the White House just put out like, see, I can't, look how affectionate our president is to the first lady. He just put his arm around her. I'm like, affectionate? If I was married and I didn't put my arm around my fucking wife, or at least that's at minimum. Yeah. At minimum, like, and then at the funeral, there was a lot of like bullshit about the whole blue, because Prince Harry was, or Prince William was in blue, so Joe Biden was just rose behind him in blue, right? So obviously the American English got the memo of blue for some reason, but it was weird because she was like in all black with like the veil, and so she's been really weird. The hat at the inauguration, this last one, now she's wearing the full fucking like funeral veil where you can't see her face fully. And it's like she's popping up whenever she wants. You're not seeing her really talk or do any first lady shit. And now PBS is going to do a special on her for $40 million of public money.
Yeah, she ran the Easter egg event. I've seen pictures. My barber, this woman, she spent 10 minutes today in the barber chair showing me pictures of her being at the Easter egg hunt at the White House.
Oh, well, that was the morning that the Pope had died too, ironically, and J.D. Vance was in India. So yeah.
So the Pope died on the Queen's birthday, didn't he?
He died. Well, what was Monday?
Is it the 20? He died on the 21st, which is the.
Queen's he died. Birthday. Yeah, he died. He died technically on the 21st from Vatican time and the 20th from our time, but he died with like I think the sun at 0 or just turned 1 degree Taurus, like.
Taurus, because she's the May.
Really, the Queen was 0 degree Taurus, and Hitler was 0 degree Taurus.
She's the May Queen. Queen Elizabeth is the May Queen.
Yeah.
Do you know who else? Do you know who else died on the Queen's birthday?
No.
Prince.
Oh, shit.
Prince died on the Queen's birthday. Prince has been dead for
a while. Yeah, like what? 2013.
He's been dead. No, 2016.
Or 2016.
He's been dead for almost 10 years now.
That was the Mars retrograde in Scorpio. He'd passed that period.
Wrap your head around that. He's been dead for almost 10 years now. And no, he's not playing Kamala Harris. Sorry. Like that was,
I mean, that's like they're saying Jim Carrey played Biden.
I may be more inclined to believe that than Prince.
Maybe, but I also think Jim Carrey's somebody who you watch get really big really quick. And then, of course, his girlfriend dies, and he was the one who was trying to bring spirituality, kind of like a similar situation with Russell Brand, who's now a Catholic, who fucking has a sex issue with women and fucking is now trying to ask everybody for their prayers and won't talk about fucking anything esoteric.
Did he convert to Catholicism?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They all did.
Well, Russell and Prince are both Geminis.
They all have. I mean, I love Steve Bannon, but he's Catholic and he kind of pushes it. And Jack, what's his name, Przozak or whatever, he's Catholic. Like the Catholic list of the right wingers is larger than a Protestant, right? It's like, and then the only one that's the weirdo is Glenn Beck, who's a Mormon.
So I'm playing fact checker. And there seems to be some confusion about what Russell Brand converted to. That's the same with Jordan Peterson. That's the story they're putting out, so nobody knows on both of them. Today's Catholic says Russell Brand's baptism reveals the urgent need for tradition. I would never have guessed Russell Brand would be defending Christianity on Instagram, but here we are. The actor's journey to Christianity led him to share his millions of followers. He'd been chosen to be baptized, and so he was. He took the plunge. Sunday, April 28th, was baptized in the River Thames. But it doesn't necessarily say that he is a Catholic.
So you know what So JD Vance in 2019 converts to Catholicism, and you know what then he invests in? The fucking app Pray. And so JD Vance is making, like, nobody talks about the tech part of JD Vance, but the reason why David Sachs and all these people really kind of rounded up is because that's why JD Vance was picked as VP, because he's the one who's in there. Then he has the app that literally has the most Catholics and the most Christians around the world on, and they're all paying their $20 a month, and it's fucking like making more money than anything in the world. So people have to realize
Brand is a Catholic. I was able to determine it.
I knew it.
He converted to Catholicism.
That's because right now, if you're in the right-wing pipeline and you're new and you're going to come in, you have to go Catholic. It's really weird.
That makes sense, David. It makes total sense that it would be the conduit to sort of redeem the non-believers, right? It feels. There's also this. What do they call it? Charismatic Christianity. You know about these guys? They're Catholics who have embraced the charismatic side of Christianity. So that's what Mike Pence is. That's what Amy Coney Barrett is. So it's this weird offshoot of Catholicism.
Weird. I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah, that leads into dispensationalism. So it's kind of like they're covering.
Kind of like how Quakerism broke off into Mormonism. Some Quakers, like that's kind
of.
Yeah,
they're kind of covering their bases. Like, yeah, I can be Catholic and I can get down with the Baptists. Like that's what charismatic Christianity is all about, or charismatic Catholicism. So it would make sense, though, for these converts to go through the Catholic portal. I actually think Russell Brand has a really interesting chart. Like,
yeah, I think his whole conversion is a testament to being a Gemini with a bunch of Pisces, and you just see another twin, because we all know that Trump, wasn't Christian when he became the president in the first term. Now he's pushing Jesus, but is it him? Because we know he doesn't tweet. We know that he has somebody type it out for him. Just say whatever makes the Christians happy. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of interesting that I feel like he plays the Christian card to keep the party, and because
of course he does. But Trump being a Gemini has both sides covered, right? He's got the Christian side with Paula White and the sort of the dispensationalism. Then on the other side, he's got Ivanka and Abad, right? So he's got both sides of the religious aisle covered, which is very Gemini, isn't it?
Oh, it's extremely Gemini.
Yeah, totally Gemini.
And I just think that's where it's like I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this, but I did say it recently. I feel like the reason why we're seeing the love for Israel and our military might and all that is because you have, I'll use the example of like Pete Hegseth, who has a Templar tattoo, right?
Yeah.
That this is going back to old astrology and also just history and very Pisces. Like, the Christians are all unhappy they lost the Holy War, because anybody who becomes Catholic or becomes a true Christian and they look in the Holy Wars, the Christian got their ass beat. The last Crusades were horrible and they lost the ground. And so, wouldn't you want to be closer to the door that you're trying to also bring down, the same way that Saudi Arabia is kind of like, let's be friends? And you think of the Abraham Accords, right? And then it's all been kind of broken up since. And it kind of reminds me of how like Trump and the Prince are kind of like, well, as long as our shoulder's on the door, well, when this door breaks down, then it's on and there's no hard feelings. Whoever wins this war when we get to that place. And then that's what I feel like is actually a lot of the sentiment that's happening. I got a feeling that there is this huge Christian desire to go in to take back the Holy Land, the same way that the Muslims have that idea. And the same way that Israel thinks that they're the ones who own it, when they all three claim. I mean, if you look at the Council of Nicaea, it's up there in the first part of the doctrine that our claim to Jerusalem is valid, right? So they all have a claim to that.
Right. Yes. And I think the Hegseth tattoo is an interesting symbol.
With being in charge of the military, right? And Templar Knights, right? Like, and
but didn't Richard the Lionhearted like strike a deal with Saladin? And didn't they like didn't they hang out? It was like, you can use Jerusalem and then you can use, like, that was kind of the deal that they struck, because
it was Saladin played him because he was waiting for more of his troops to come by. And so he played him and then countered him and then took over. And then the deal that was made was all of your men can leave, but all of the people who aren't knights are going to be our slaves. And you need to leave all these different parts of the women, because the one thing that the Christians didn't do was rape and turn into slaves the Muslim women. The Muslims turned the Christian women into sex slaves and slaves. And so that was a common thing. So Saladin also killed his head of mysticism at the oldest university in the world, which is at the time the Ottoman Empire, and had him killed because he was playing with astrology and all that stuff at the same time. And the Templar Knights were using astrology and finding out all the mystical things at their time.
They were using a bit more than astrology, apparently.
Right, exactly. So the Saladin had to go, well, we're not doing that. And so the Muslims actually became hardcore against occultism, even though they're all three interlinked in astrology and all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's a really weird time. And we played that history out over the last, astrologically, over the last like 2 years. So
I want to get back to one of the things that we talked about initially, which is this idea about kind of where astrology is right now and how different,
I would agree.
How different like portions of our society view astrology. And we touched a little bit on sort of the right side of astrology, and it feels like maybe some of these people are well-intentioned, but they are pushing the astrological message through a particular lens and a particular bias, and they are interpreting transits so that it looks favorable to Trump and the right, just like how the left did it with Kamala Harris.
Yep.
And like, it's the same thing. Like, both sides are now like politically invested in their astrological predictions lining up based on their ideology, which I think is not a good practice of astrology.
Well, it's dangerous too, because I don't even know if it's truly a prediction, because it's kind of like, it's easy to see some things that the writings are on the wall when you're close to it. So it's kind of like the difference between being a prophetic astrologer and being a prediction astrologer is a prediction's easy to make. If you have a client that's just come in, you see the sun in the 12th house, you see, I don't know, maybe Saturn squaring their Saturn, it's kind of like you're so close to the moment, of course they're going to be in a hard space. So like, it's easy. But a prophetic astrologer is one that's seeing it so far ahead when nobody's thinking about it, being like, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, that's going to happen, nobody's going to believe it at the time, but And I think the problem is that they're acting like prophets, because they also are connected to that right side, which connects to prophets. So they're acting like they're prophets when they're really just making minor predictions in minor moments, and trying to also sometimes take a story, and even though they didn't say it was that story, but try to also say it's relative enough for it. So it's like, if you're on a reading with somebody and it's like, well, it's still going to be kind of relative, right? Like, people either like, no, that happened, or no, it didn't. Like, like, you know, and as an astrologer, okay, yeah, no, it's not. But it's like almost like if they were on a reading with somebody, you're like, no, I'm telling you, you are this, right? Like, that's the worst kind of astrologer. Like, you are this, even when the person's like, wait, I don't resonate. Like, that didn't happen to me. Like, yeah, no, you are. And that's what I feel like it kind of is. And then the ethics of the astrology is like, you have to be able to like look at the transits and go, well, this is going to be a time, because it's very Neptunian, where, you know, for you to put all your faith and to lose yourself into the illusion on either side at this moment, especially at the end of Pisces, crossing into Aries, Saturn, doing both of them are going to cross back and never conjunct as they come into Aries and they go back into Pisces and then finally conjunct in Aries, meaning like, talk about like being waterboarded, like, you know what I mean? Like, and thinking, oh no, it's going to happen. No, it's like, and it's also trying to get the attention, because what they saw was Shani Nichols on the left promoting LGBTQ astrology get in the Atlantic and all that kind of stuff. And they want that now on the right. The only problem is the right isn't that way.
Well, the
right?
only problem is that they'll run into this hardcore version of dispensationalist Christianity, and they will be booted because there's no room for astrology in that world.
No right? Form of it, period.
Yeah. So again, there's this one astrologer, and he's clearly kind of, playing the trump card with astrology. And he's on Twitter, and he's talking about, what Trump is doing now. And, it looks like he might even get a second term. And if not, he's setting up this whole thing with a legacy for J.D. Vance. And Vance is going to come in, and he'll run this thing and he's talking about it. It's like, dude, you're not even paying attention to Mars going through Trump's 12th house.
Right.
Like you're just like future casting, and you can't even pick up this flashing red light that we've been talking about, because you're so invested in making America great again. And here's your players that are going to do that. And my astrology is going to match that. And that's really what it boils down to. And you saw it on the left. How many people said on the left, Kamala Harris was going to win? Oh, we talked about this, right?
And and they wouldn't ever bring up the fact that Mars was going to retrograde, right? Like, okay, in Leo, and they were just going, well, she has Mars in Leo, so this is going to be great for her. Like, instead of being
was Mars Mars was
retrograding in her 12th house, it gets closer to ascendant, but it goes backwards. Like the oldest basic astrology of all 101 is just right. Like, I already was like,
Jupiter doesn't hit or ascendant.
I know. But that's where the left uses the whole sign and the idea that Jupiter's in your first as an ascendant, so you're going to automatically get whatever you want. Like,
no, it didn't work that way.
It didn't work that way. And that's why I got a lot of flack in the astrology community when my post was about that. Like, well, this just proved again that whole sign astrology is not the answer to prediction. Using it in that way. Maybe if they want to use their Hellenistic approach and use zodiacal releasing, you convert back to a whole sign understanding, because it's an old ancient technique that's used in dashas and mahadashas and the Vedic astrologers. But as far as like not wanting to actually use the ascendant's actual position and where the planets are relative to that in the transits of the houses, like, is kind of like going backwards.
So there's another part to this that you and I talked about a little bit, and it's even on a further extreme than sort of what we've been talking about with this new so-called right astrology. And that's people who are using astrology and sigils like live, real time, either on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter. And they're using them against other people, right?
Yeah, so there's like that one astrologer that you brought up, but I can't even see his profile. He like blocked me, and I didn't even know who he was. I was like, that's weird.
Right.
But that's where that's like the third angle now, which is actually the worst part of the astrology, right? Is when they become Aleister Crowley out of nowhere. Great astrologer, right. Horrible person who converts to demonic worship and mixing that with his esoteric, but he kind of loses the astrology. He understands the foundation and goes way into the tarot cards and goes way into the Golden Dawn and goes way into the Masonic, like really left tier of it, like, and takes it to and claims ownership to it and becomes the head of that.
When the witch hunt comes for astrologers, it will be those people who will wind up initiating the witch hunt, because that is kind of an open practice and application of magic using astrology. And here's my devil's advocate to it all. Maybe these right-wing astrologers are doing that to be the last on the list, meaning maybe
they know they're going to go after the ones that look fucking too occulty. Then they're going to go after the left-wing ones that were promoting trans and pushing the shot in their horoscopes and all that stuff. Then they'll go after the people like me and you who call spade to spade. It doesn't matter what's happening. And then the last people they'll do are those people. But maybe it could be the inverse, where those are the people that go first because we don't want that in our party.
Right. Yeah. Well,
that's what they're not thinking about. Like, we don't want to be associated with that in our party. So they're not going to go after the guy doing a sigil who's like wearing all black and conjuring up with black tattoos and black everything and fucking right. Like, that guy is kind of like, whatever. He's on the fringe. You're a MAGA person and you're an astrologer. You're not Catholic. Oh my God. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other version would be the one to sort of kick it off. And maybe it's the astrologers on the right that they come for first. Because, I have this wonderful client, and she has two daughters. And one of her daughters got married to an older dude who's a kind of a hardcore Christian, where, whatever he says goes in the house. And he won't even let her granddaughter come over to this woman's house because she makes salves and she makes tinctures and she's a witch. And, she also follows astrology. And she can't even have any, Congress with her own daughter. And we thought COVID was bad, right? We thought COVID was that thing that would be
that judgment aspect and not allowed here and you can't go to the hospital all the way to, especially in the family units, right? Like, no, you didn't take a test before you could come in here. You're not wearing a mask. We're opening the windows and you're unvaccinated. Go sit on the other side of the house.
So there seems to be sort of the new set of protocols that, and you can even see this with the two eclipses that we had, right? So in 2017, we had that great eclipse that started on the 33rd state and ended on the 33rd parallel. And then we had the eclipse in 2024, which went right up through the center of the country, literally splitting the country in quarters. And we've seen this, right? We've seen the right get split. We've seen the left get split. So it's not just along, you're on the right, you're on the left. Like, okay, we have that sort of divide. Now we have divisions within divisions. And that to me is kind of like what that family is going through. Like, this woman who's my client, very conservative person, not down with the left, not down with the propaganda, not down with,
it's already
PC
popping
culture.
Up now on the right as that.
That's what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
But then in her family, her daughter has split off even further, and it's gotten even more extreme.
Right.
So this is what I'm talking about with these two eclipses. It's like the quartering of America. And so we're seeing the quartering even on the right and the left. And even in this discussion, you and I are talking about these so-called right or MAGA astrologers, and we're not down, right? Because they're doing this through the same perceptual bias that the left would do within their own sort of ideological frame set. So even in that regard, people that you and I, like, we might sit down with Sal and we might agree with him on a lot of things, right? Like, that's really possible. But on the other hand, now we've got this split and this fracture. And I think it's really endemic of these eclipses, that we're seeing the subdivision of these positions that have been already mapped out, and people don't even realize it right now.
Well, and the problem, whether you're left or right and you take a position that way, is you're not going to call out what the astrology is saying. So with the Biden right thing, it's like none of the left was like, this guy's not caught. It's like how Nancy Pelosi was not Nancy Pelosi. It was just Elizabeth Warren was on that left-wing podcast, and he asked her, like, why were you saying Biden was so sharp? And she's like, well, he was able to stand, and he goes, really? That's your reason the guy could walk? And she went, okay, fair point. So she finally got caught up. It's kind of like you're not going to see a person on the left or the right call anything out. And why? Because you're too afraid of your audience you're becoming a cult at that point. You're becoming a cult to where it's like, I have the astrology is showing that this is happening, it's hitting this person, and this is where their evolutionary transits of like where they have to work. We all are imperfect. We all have to figure go through things. We all make mistakes, but you have to be willing to, as an astrologer, be like, yeah, this is also where then you add the layers of mundane astrology on top, the personal astrology of people, and you just say what it is. It's just like, sorry, like this is going to be a difficult transit for this person, and it just happens to be at this timing, and that's what it is. But they're too afraid to get people to be, oh my God, they went that direction now. Because what? No, it's not even about going a direction. You're going in the direction of the astrology, but they're not going in the direction of the astrology.
Exactly.
They're picking the direction of the astrology to only be positive things because they don't want to lose an audience, or especially a bigger audience that they think is hopefully going to find them. And that's when you've that's selling yourself the same way that celebrities do to act a certain way to get a CAA to sign them.
So let's look at this through Pluto and Aquarius, which is fixed, right? I mean, it's fixed. And we're dealing with this idea that as an astrologer, you have to be a certain way. But when you were this way before, then why are you moving in this direction? And it's like, well, it's because we're like looking for the truth. You know, we're using astrology as a tool to understand what our experience is. But that Pluto and Aquarius just wants to put people in a fixed place, right? It's like, no, it doesn't really work that way. It's not how this thing operates. You have to come at it from as agnostic of a position as possible.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where any good astrologer has looked through the past of all the best astrologers throughout history. And this becomes this battle. I love John Dee's story just because if you look at Queen Elizabeth I, she's actually conservative because she's the one who defends and keeps the Church of England going. The witch trials are happening in Scotland, and she won't do that in England. So that's kind of interesting. She's maintaining Christianity, her father's version of it, right? So it doesn't go off the rails back to like her sister Mary was trying to make a Catholic again, right? And so John Dee is navigating weird waters to where he's trying to get all this esoteric information out there, and he's allowed to. And what happens? Then it just starts turning. She gets older, so then he starts reaching out to, the Holy Roman Emperor, because that's becoming a republic. So there is no laws, and he's obsessed with esoteric knowledge. So he starts writing to them. Nostradamus is writing to him, and they're all saying this idea of a republic. Because what comes to every single astrologer in history is this idea of coming back to a republic where it's not an emperor and it's not a religious built-in fucking society that is going to make it to where none of this info can come out. So he goes and scries, and he has to go outside of Western Europe. He has to go into Hungary. He has to go into where today is Ukraine, Prussia, all these places with Edward Kelly. And then he gets called back. His mom dies. He ends back at Mortlake. His library and all the books are stolen. He had the biggest library in the world of all the esoteric knowledge. It was just stolen. And then boom, King James comes in, the first, right? Because he was of Scotland, but the first one to bridge back England now. And boom, what does he do? Goes straight hard, makes a new Bible. The pilgrimages, of course, happen because of him, but he has to write an apology letter to James for doing astrology and for doing all of his esoteric work in order to survive. He also had to do that with Queen Mary prior. He was on her court. He did her astrology, but you're not allowed to do the astrology of a royal unless asked, and he had just done it to kind of try and help her. So she was going to kill him, and then they kept him alive at the other second. So, you know, he's the best example of like somebody who has to needle through all these things, and he doesn't, I'm just going to do whatever you want to do. The only time he had to do it was to stay alive is like literally say, I apologize for doing this. It was okay then. I understand it's not okay for you now, and okay. But
so you said something.
Energies exactly coming into what about the change of countries and their religious craziness of ideas of, and so believe it or not, Neptune and Aries has to do with the identification of a religion in this higher kind of way, right? It's like you're identified by, you're wearing a cross, you're wearing a fucking Star of David, you're wearing a fucking I don't want to say the wrong word, but whatever you wear as a woman and Muslim, like world, right? It's like
a burqa.
A burqa. You're wearing this, you're doing that. Like that's where it gets so far out that it's the same. And then that's what COVID was, right? It was like, oh my God, like you're wearing a mask. So it like kind of is the higher intense, more version of it now, where it's like if you have a coexist sticker, somebody's probably going to fucking create a whole movement against coexist. You know what I mean? Like,
have you ever worn a turban?
No.
You'd look good in a turban. I was just thinking about like religious wear, like I think you'd look really interesting in a turban.
That'd be cool.
Like, I don't think I could pull a turban off. Like, I'm too white, but I think you could pull a turban.
I've always said I could go into Egypt. I can go in the Middle East. I could go anywhere and blend in.
Yeah.
Like, I could just grow my beard out and be in Egypt, and people would be like, "You're Egyptian." I'd be like, "Yeah." And then I could go into Asia and be like, "Yeah, no, I'm a Filipino." And they'd be like, "Yeah." And then I could go
to Ireland and blend in. That's where I could go.
Right? But, well, actually, I think I would blend in more in the United Kingdom now than you.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, I wanted to talk to you about Gen Z for a little bit, because I think Gen Z has a really interesting relationship with astrology. Like, they dig it. My son is Gen Z, so he's...
Well, they dig it for a moment, and then I can find the article, it just came out today, Gen Z is doubling down harder on Christianity than any other generation right now, and making the first bump in the number since 2007, the number of people that were Christian just went up in the last 2 years, and it's Gen Z that's pushing it. So
you would get that with Pluto and Sag, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
You would definitely get that. And that's one of the things I talked about with Gen Z. But they also have Neptune and Uranus, that first wave. Like, there's two waves of Gen Z: Neptune, Pluto, Sag, Uranus, and Aquarius. And then, was it around 2001 where Uranus goes into Pisces? Is that right? 2001, 2002. And that's the next wave. My son has that Uranus and Pisces. So there's kind of two versions of Gen Z, but that early group is really connected to these Aquarian energies. And Pluto is starting to hit their Uranus and their Neptune.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I was born at the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think that it's Pluto that's playing a role in like getting them to think about organized religion more than maybe astrology as it hits Neptune, Uranus? Or is it just the inevitability of Pluto and Sag, which is going to be the transformation of a generation's belief and faith?
I'm going to use Jeff Jower's way that he would probably look at it. He died in 2014, but he was a great astrologer and he was a Taurus. But he always said,
like Jeff. He was the better. He was the better half of the duo, by the way.
He was an amazing. I was one of his last personal readings before he passed away. It's insane. I'll save that recording for the rest of my life. It was the best reading I ever had.
Rick is a nice man, but he was better when he was with Jeff.
Yeah, I mean that must be hard. They were best. It'd be like me and you, and if one of us like left, but we did this every day. But
they worked together all the time.
I know.
You and I.
It would be weird. It would be weird to be so connected and then lose someone. It'd be like rough. But like Jeff would always say, take the planets. Oh, okay. And this is basic astrology, but like, okay, it's Pluto and Aquarius, but where's their Pluto? Go always back to the flavor of the Pluto. So it's a Pluto Sag. So you're already in a place where you think you know everything. Pluto and Sag, I know it all. No, you don't. Right? And then it comes into Aquarius. Well, what is everyone else doing? And what do they believe? Because the last time Pluto Sagittarius went through this exact transit was during the Revolutionary War, and it became, I don't know about this, and then it's like, well, what is everybody else is joining the constitutional? Okay, I'm gonna go be a rebel, or you know what? Right. So like it becomes other people, Pluto, other people's ambitions that sink in, and especially in Aquarius for Pluto Sag, it's going to be, well, I have the belief for you, don't I? Right? Like, okay. So that's why you've seen them bounce from. They're the ones who made like Andrew Tate big, right? Like, and then on the women's side, they're the ones who made OnlyFans girls like huge, right? Like, and become that kind of. So they're the same thing to me, just the masculine and feminine.
Yeah, Tate always struck me as being more millennial, but he's actually Gen Z.
Is he?
Like, I think he's really. I think he's right there at that Pluto.
I just know that his fan base is the Gen Z males, right? Like they're young.
No. Actually, believe it or not, Andrew Tate's fan base is like really young Gen Z and like these Gen A 13, 14, 15-year-olds. Those are the guys that are into Andrew Tate.
Because his schools were like how to pick up on chicks and how to treat them and how to get laid. Like literally
they're early Pluto and Capricorn kids. Started to show up 2009. And what are they now? Like 16, 15, 16?
Right.
So like my son, I asked my son, so are you into Andrew Tate? You know who Andrew Tate is? Oh yeah, I know who Andrew Tate is. I said, are you into him? He says, oh no. He says, he's for much younger dudes. And my son at the time was 19.
Right.
Right. So he was talking about 15, 16-year-olds who would have been sort of very tail end Gen Z, but some of these like Pluto and Capricorn, very sophisticated Pluto and Capricorn Gen A kids on the come up, right? They're listening to Andrew Tate. So and
then like most of us, we're all not Gen Z, but some people might be. But like the younger ones, they don't watch YouTube. They're on like Kick, right? Like it's all live streaming and it's video games and it's, you know, like on the women's side, then you have women looking up to OnlyFans girls, right? It's like a room full of like 20 OnlyFans girls talking about their like sexual experiences and the good, the bad, but how to make all that money and how to fucking deal with the dude and get the rich guy, but then take the money. It's the same thing, just Andrew Tate's doing it the inverse way. Like make sure that you get the girl and then make her a webcam girl and make the money off that bitch. Like, you know, it's like, whoa, that's the same thing being said on both sides, right? But that's the problem, is that you just then you see this kind of like there's nothing of substance, because that's the problem with Sag, is it's explorative, and then Aquarius is like lacking substance. It's very cold, and it's also like very ideological, but also like I want to do something good for people and I want to find my expression, but I don't know what that is. Especially Pluto and Aquarius, people are like that don't know they're Leo. You use the opposite, as Jeffrey Green Wolf would say, is the point. You got to look at the Leo point for Pluto transits. Is like that's where the evolutionary point is that in order to help people, you got to love yourself. You got to totally be courageous enough to do it. And I think they're looking for something, and that's the problem. Is there any consistency with Sag and Aquarius? Well, Aquarius is consistent because it's fixed, but it also likes to shift that fixed nature in a random moment and like let the shock value hit to make that feeling of that energy be a shock. That's the fixed energy. And so I think that's where you're seeing them really not know and kind of like what's the next thing. And especially I remember, I don't know if you remember your Pluto-Neptune transit, like when I was on drugs, my Pluto or Neptune at 29 Sag. So I'm like, oh my God, I found spirituality.
Oh,
but
man.
Because I was out there playing and doing drugs and doing things and hearing everything that I'm like, all these religious people are crazy.
Yeah, I remember when Neptune was in Sag and hit my ascendant. I think it was around 12 years old. It was like the first time I got drunk. And Neptune and Sag at my first house was an adventure, but it was like, too much too soon.
But so what, your Neptune's in Scorpio then, right?
Yeah.
So when Pluto in the 80s came through, what was that your awakening moment?
Pluto, the awakening moment for me was just before. So Pluto was in Libra, right, until 84, and it goes into Scorpio.
Yeah.
And it goes into my 12th house for like 15 years, right? Or for 14 years. And that was a really heavy time. It was like a super, super heavy time. And I felt in some ways like I was sort of lost in the desert. Like I had some really interesting moments during that time, but it isn't really until Pluto hits my ascendant in the early 90s, you know, in the final degrees of Pluto. Like
so it hits your
94.
Neptune, and there's kind of that desert feel because it's in the 12th house. And so it
Well, it
kind
was
of
dark.
really,
I mean, the Pluto transit through my 12th house statement was really, for me,
right. But that's kind of
At times very
interesting because you
dark
probably
period
have
of time.
Neptune there, right? In the 12th?
I have Neptune on the cusp of the 11th and the 12th.
Okay, so it's like you kind of enter into this 12th house desert with an extra Neptune salad on top, and it's finally the ascendant that goes, I'm out of that and I can define it now. So that's where unique astrology comes in for everybody. Not everybody's Pluto conjunction to Neptune is going to be their great awakening moment.
Well,
You know.
I did have an awakening moment. Don't get me
Right.
wrong.
Okay, there's that.
During that time, and it was, I think it was the Pluto ingress conjunct Neptune. That's about my awakening moment happened before that. Like 1981 was when I had the
The big, the Libra pile up that began.
I mean, it was huge. I mean, I went through a very powerful and intense, what I would call a conversion experience. But
How
that
far
Pluto-
off is your sextile to your Pluto in Virgo, your Neptune?
So let's see. It's probably like 10 degrees, 9 degrees. I think it's 9 degrees.
Yeah, so like that's what I use as the gauge is like if somebody's farther off, it's kind of more of a journey to figure it out. It's not like an instant, I know what I am and this is where I'm going. Like
No, I reestablished my relationship with Neptune here. So Neptune is at 7. It's not even in a sex. It's not even in a sextile.
Right. So if you think
sun's at
about
29.
you think about those kids who have Pluto and Sag, it's usually higher in Neptune just at the beginning of Aquarius. So there's like a 7 to sometimes 10 degree orb, you know, because Neptune's faster than Pluto. And so then you get to like where, because it was in the 80, it was in 84 when it was Neptune 29 Sag, Pluto 29 Libra, like me, exact within a minute. Like I am exact sextile. So for me, it was like instant. I know what I'm here to do. Bye. Like it was like no more question. I just know. But the farther that sextile, if it is one, it becomes a little bit more of a journey, I would say. But I think more so with a Pluto Sag and a Neptune in Aquarius because they're also getting it right before their Saturn return. I got my Pluto conjuncting my Neptune. That happened in 2007. I was 23 years old. They're getting this shit 26, 27 years old, 28 at their Saturn return times.
So I just looked it up because I know the weekend where my life made this huge pivot, sort of dark night of the soul. And Uranus was in Scorpio, conjunct my ascendant. And Neptune was in Sagittarius, conjunct Jupiter in my chart.
So that Uranus conjunction.
It was the Uranus conjunction on my ascendant. And I literally became almost overnight a different person.
Yeah.
And
that's wild. Like I'll never experience an outer planet across my ascendant this life. Except for maybe Uranus, right? Like, but maybe.
Dude, you're missing out, man.
Well, I mean, at least I get it when I'm like, you know, way past AARP and wondering, you know, I'll get Uranus and Leo that'll cross over when I'm older, but I'll never have Neptune and I'll never have Pluto because I'm a Leo ascendant, right? So like
then I had Pluto cross my ascendant in Scorpio.
So 90s, I think where you see the more extreme situations, it really determines by sun sign because like anybody born around those planets, like especially Gen Zers, right? So like the ones that are going to be born in the South, like the ones that have the sun in Sag, the sun in Capricorn, the sun in Aquarius are going to be the ones that really, I would say, are the ones that they were protesting for George Floyd, and now they're becoming a Christian because it's okay that way because an OnlyFans girl and Andrew Tate told them, and then, you know, it's like right? Whereas like people who have suns on the other side, they're not going to have like the big conjunctions to their sun to make them change so much the whole identity as much.
That's a great take. So I have this just intuitive hit, and it maybe it's this Neptune Saturn.
I stole that from Starseed Astro, by the way. Just kidding. They don't even talk about that kind of shit. I don't think. Fucking funny.
I have a feeling, and you could say, well, because Pluto in Aquarius is still going to be, kind of erotica and smut online, whatever. I have a feeling that we're going to start to see the end of the OnlyFans culture. I feel like that's
kind of is at its end already. It was very end of Pluto Capricorn, desperation for needing of attention and fame and money, and so in Aquarius it's been, no, you're not that hot, and no, we don't care that you used to be an actress, like you don't look the way you did, and it's kind of like people are like, and you're not real, and I'm not talking to really you, right? Very Pluto Capricorn, all these levels that you have to get through to actually talk to the girl.
It just feels to me like this Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries it kind of puts an end to it, right?
Yeah.
It really feels like game over. And again, this is a Pluto in Sag Gen Z person, and I have a client, and I'm working with this client with coaching. I do coaching with people, and she's in that kind of 22, 23-year-old Gen Z pocket. What do you think I'm working on with this person? Like, what is this person's goal that they've said, hey, I've singled you out. I want you to help me get to this point. What do you think it is?
Being a spiritual influencer?
Not even close, I'll tell you.
Well, that's nice to hear.
She wants to get married, become a mother, and have kids.
Oh, got you. I know, and there's that. That's kind of becoming a bigger thing now. It's going to flip because but that's also weird because there's the trad wife fad that kind of is Catholic based, right? But I think the energy now of this Aries energy is like with Pluto and Aquarius, like, yeah, you're going to feel alone if you don't have anybody around. And it also is, I think, been a big testament to the Pluto Capricorn idea, especially for women, of like, I need to prove that I can be anything I want to be in the world. Like, because any woman that wasn't able to prove it, if you were a mom or if you were in that space during Pluto Capricorn, you were just like, well, let's not invite her. She probably has to ask her husband, or something like that, right? And so she doesn't have a corporate fucking card and a little way to get. She doesn't have a corporate card. Oh my god,
yeah, right.
But that's ending, and I think relationships. If you just think of like Aries being opposite of Libra's getting all the nice aspects from these outer planets that are changing signs. That relationships are going to be a huge part of this. And where we go now forward, like opposed to this feeling like I'm all alone and I can't find anybody that I resonate with. I think that everybody's going to be at the same playing field, though. Saturn, Neptune, and Aries to me is we're all at the same new start line. Because if I think of like the Saturn, Neptune last time in Capricorn, my parents, right, were a little older. They were like mid to late 20s, and that conjunction happened, and I was alive. I was 5, and I remember being like watching my dad, and the car industry's changing, and my mom, everything's changing, and everybody's kind of like, especially that was career and where's the world going, and everybody kind of had to kind of like find where their position was. This one's like, well, there is no position to find. We're all at the same new starting line,
Yeah,
like,
that was my Saturn return. That's what I went through.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Or Brian, who he's born with the Sun conjunct Saturn and Neptune, exact, within a degree. So I always look at Brian about Saturn, Neptune. I'm always like,
I can actually see that in Brian.
Yeah, but he's the eloquent, because he's a Capricorn. He has Saturn there, of knowing like how to be a Capricorn, but knowing that Neptune of when to just like, okay, I don't need to be so Capricorn now.
No,
he knows how to do it just right. It's like the perfect Capricorn placement, I would say, because it gives the ability to spiritually go wherever and break the rules, but also come back to the rules and not go too far in life. You know, it's like perfect.
Yeah. Neptune kind of rounds off that Capricornian edge. Right,
yeah.
As well.
And so that's where it's interesting, because Saturn's at fall in Aries. So if anything, Neptune's like, the fall of Aries is, let's just break all the rules and let's do what I want. And I don't want anybody of authority telling me what to fucking do. And I'm going to go do it whether anybody likes it or not. And so like that Neptune, does it soften that, or does it actually enhance it? It kind of is like
Saturn and Aries is kind of the boot on the neck.
I know. It's going to be rough, but it's going to be, I think, people have to remember this isn't a bad thing. It's like, I think if you are in kind of a group think where you didn't come up with it, where you're kind of being seduced into it and you're still not fully in, but you just are like, well, I'm a placeholder right now, or this is like, you can't be in placeholding positions with people, groups. It's either you're all about this and it feels spiritually aligned, or if you're in that weird in between space, it's like, get out of that so you can find where you need to go, because you're not going anywhere if you're just stuck in between. You know?
It feels like with Neptune and Saturn, you bring them together, it's like a galvanization of the spirit, right? And if you can take that plunge in that path, which again, Aries doesn't really postulate, it's not very philosophical, and for Aries out there who tend to be philosophical, this is like no.
Yeah, like, this right. Is, talking about the energy of the sign and Mars being the ruler and how Mars's energy is.
Aries is about go. It's about go. And so when we have this Neptune-Saturn conjunction, if you can galvanize your spirit and stay on that line, right, I think there's tremendous potential here for the individual, right? The challenge is if there are societal, cultural, and perhaps even civil restraints that come along with that, right? So there's this potential for like this forging of the spirit, grounding things, Neptune being not very grounded, bringing these two things together. And yet culturally, there could be other rules in play. To me, this is where it gets interesting. And we start to talk about... I love that you say the forge. It reminds me of like how like Thor is like forged, right? And it's the definition of his hammer that defines his merging together. But the irony in that whole story is he gets so much, and he's so awesome. But if you actually follow the Thor story, like the Marvel universe, it turns out like horrible, right? Like, you know, like because he becomes too confident. He thinks he's too much of the ultimate god. He relies too much on the hammer. So there's that Neptunian kind of like, I'm going to rely on this kind of like thing that's not there, but also it can make the delusion more grand of the identity and the ego and being to go with it. So I won't be surprised to see people now being out of OnlyFans and trying to be their favorite cartoon character or their favorite thing, you know, like, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see this. Like, you've got to be moving, though. I mean, that's one thing that I don't care what planet's in there. It's Aries. You've got to be doing something. So, you know, maybe that's what solves a lot of these problems with men right now. Especially men are going to be a big, like, we just had all these outer planets in the feminine energies, all the earth and the water. And so it was a time about women and the divine feminine. Now it's about men having to come back and equalize, because men are just off on every chart, from education to suicide rate to in jail to fucking not having enough people that they can find to be with as a partnership, right? Like, it's like very low. And then they're the most depressed, they're the ones going through the roughest shit. So that's going to be where like men are going to have to find the new tier of what a man is defined with. You're not going to be an 1860s man who's smoking on a pipe, who, you know, that's what defined a man. Like, it's going to be something new, but it's going to carry over some of the past stuff that has to be reminded, which is very Aryan, which is very like, where's your drive? Like, and if you're not driven, like at this period now, like the couch potato dude is going to be not accepted in society anymore. You know, it's not going to be the parents having to do it either. It's going to be the next door neighbor, the friend of the guy, and the chick, and everybody just being like, you're a fucking loser. Like, you need to do something.
And society is going to be built in a way where if you're acting that loser way, there is nobody that's just going to coddle you anymore, you know?
Well, I think that's, again, where we lean into this Neptune and Aries is the end of victimization.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, enough, it's over. It's like people just don't have the time or the patience anymore to have that Neptunian, compassion that is like almost pathological in some ways. Right. So,
I was going to say, if you saw the recruiting numbers over the last couple of months since Trump got in, they've gone through the roof, right?
Well, and that's why Pete Hegseth is there.
I mean, right. But it's like interesting that people, because I've been through that process. I was in the Navy. And so I remember going in because I'm like, all right, 2001, 9/11 happened and I was dumb. I still fell for that because it was so close. I joined in 2002. But then I saw loose change in 2003 in the Navy and was like, what the fuck did I do? But there was that whole Bush is in there. And I remember his dad as a kid, we went to fucking Iraq and he was hardcore and the Navy was pushing hard. Like Metallica was what sold me on the Navy commercial, with the fucking F-18 landing on the fucking aircraft carrier. I'm like,
that totally, by the way, that totally conjures up Saturn, Neptune, and Aries for me. Right, Navy, Metallica, Aries, right. Hardcore, right? I mean,
it's going to really kind of be that. I've been telling people this is going to be the world that's loud. You're going to hear, because I actually believe, and I might be crazy, I think the Supreme Court, when it comes to gun laws, it's probably going to be a 5-4, but it will probably go down as the constitutional right to carry again. And it probably is not maybe this year, but next year. And I think we're going to live in a world that you're going to hear gunshots again all the time. You're going to hear, it's going to be a loud world. Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries, Pluto and Aquarius. It is not going to be soft like it's been in Pluto, Capricorn, Neptune, Pisces, and Uranus, Taurus. The little bit of loudness that Uranus and Aries brought was nothing compared to what this is going to bring. It's going to be a loud world. And also, it's the world of the extrovert, meaning you can still be introverted, but in order to get the food, in order to get you got to say something. You got to know somebody. You got to go for it. You got to take that action. You just can't be like, well, I'll go to the store tomorrow. No, it might be gone. It's going to be kind of like that.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point because you might just be left behind. I mean, everything is going to happen so quickly with these 3 outer planets, right? Like if you're not fit and ready to go and do whatever you need to do, and I call it stay in the game, but also be innovative and have some novelty.
Because the store of what you need to act on is what the last decade plus has been with these planets in Pisces, right? Neptune, Uranus, and Taurus the last 7 years.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you take action because you do have the gas can so you don't get lost. Oh, what? There's no gas at the gas station? Like, I could just see it. You didn't pay attention. You know what I mean? Like, because now we're at the place where you didn't pay attention. You're acting on what you paid attention to. It's more of like, I know what to do because I know exactly what was seen during the little soft times. That it's like, if you paid attention, it's easy to act because you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to go to that gas station. I already have the one in my head that I know that nobody goes to. I've already analyzed that in my head. I already know.
Right, exactly. Totally. I mean,
but people are not in that space. They're just like, well, I know the DoorDash guy arrives on time usually, and I always have to tell him to push the right button to get up. But, it's like, well, that doesn't matter because no DoorDash guy is going to bring you gasoline.
I have never used DoorDash.
Well, for us that live, in like California and shit like that, it's lifesaver.
Do you know why I've never used DoorDash? And I'm not ashamed to say this. The Virgo in me is like a little freaked out that somebody might fuck with my food. So that's why they every location now, every restaurant has to put fucking break. You can tell if somebody broke into it. Yeah. So there's no way, including on the drinks, including everything. And then all you do if they do that, if it's broken, I take pictures, I get all my money back. Right. That's good to know, I guess.
I mean, it's just nice because if you think about traveling to go to a restaurant,
I get it.
Picking it up, the price of it is cheaper, and you get it delivered to your house.
I get it. I'm just just
especially if you're like, oh, and I forgot, I need more toothpaste too. Go to CVS for me really quick and get that.
Yeah.
So it's like the ultimate errand.
But
no, that's
I get it.
that,
I get it.
You know, but that's nobody's thinking about that world too. If like, you know, like what we just saw, I think the biggest story is that I think is not being maybe taken in by people in the like America maybe as much is what happened with the power situation in Europe. I mean, and what they've been seeing multiply with that, but they are higher up in declination and closer to where there's a lot of activity solar wise and what's happening with our magnetic field. And that's where I think that Pluto and Aquarius is like, look up to the skies. Because I remember this connects kind of all the things that we said. Michael Luton always taught when Pluto moves into a new sign, whoever looks like the hero is not. Right? So Obama, we talked about that, not. Trump, not going to be the hero. And I just knew that and this isn't about him. It's about the astrology. Just whoever comes, it's very Pluto, very seductive. Like, I'm going to change everything. Right? And then there's always the bad guy who gets pushed to the side. And he always said, that doesn't mean they weren't bad. It just means they were bad and they weren't going to work, but people got seduced to the other side. And then the other thing is in that moment, people start to get kind of like wake up and go, oh, fuck, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I like. And oh, man. And that's such a Pluto transit in people's lives that, you know, you got to look at everything as kind of like, okay, the seduction of Pluto coming into a new sign always is what, you know, you think it's going to be this and that and that. And it's all like Pluto's always like, it's not, because that's how seduction works. You know, it's kind of like, oh, they looked at me. I think they probably think I'm really hot. I'm going to do everything to try and get their attention. And then you finally say, hey, can I take you out? And it's like, oh, I'm actually married and I have a kid and I'm on my way right now to go see my husband. It's our 15th year anniversary. Bye-bye. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, what? I thought they gave me a look.
Well, why were you looking at me? Well, it's because you got a big hunk of snot right here on the top of your shirt.
Or it's like, oh, actually, I was looking at the price of the gas at the gas station behind you, you know?
Do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that scene in Swingers when Vince Vaughn is like at the diner.
Oh,
you
yeah.
See Swingers?
Of course.
There's a woman like doing all this shit, right? And he's like, oh, this baby's into me. I think this baby's into me, right? Oh, she's making all these eyes at me, right? And he goes over to approach her, and there's actually a baby like sitting across from this woman.
And then he's like,
she's making all the faces.
I was at that diner before.
That's fucking hilarious, man. That's exactly what you're talking about. Right.
Yeah. It's like really like, that's how Pluto takes us all into the new transit is we all get seduced and we all hope for the best and we all want, and then, and that's part of what you have to pay attention to. And especially,
that's a great point.
He says with world leaders, right? So it's like there's something, because that Pluto is the power, whatever's taking the power, right? Like the idea of I'm seducing you, that I have the power to change things. And anybody that's actually in that, he always said, look at the person's Pluto, the house it's in, the whatever. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. Like, but people have to find that trust with you because they have to go through the motions with you. But like, you know, that's where I think like people have to remember. Then you have to add Neptune. Now you have to add Uranus, right? Like this is all happening at once. So you're adding all these kind of seductive factors and unpredictable events and this really lost kind of understanding of the definition of it, all things, which is zero Aries, meaning that the whole entire computer files are being wiped and renamed, and they're not just being renamed, but the file is a different file than you thought it was. It's not an MP3, it's a fucking this, you know, like, wait, what?
Right.
Which is like an acid trip. Like I defined my whole world after my acid trips. It was like, oh my God, these people are crazy. Like I remember looking at everything in life and being like, I'm redefining. Nope, these religious people are crazy. Because I was on a Sunday walking around with my buddy on the beach, fucking on acid, and like watching people walk out of a church, and I was just like hearing them and the fights that were happening, walking out of the church, like, oh, these people are weird. It was crazy. And that's where Timothy Leary even said, out of all of his stuff at Harvard, when he took people to a church, that was the only place they were having spiritual experiences, but they never were Christian. They were all about something else. It was a space of like, where at least there was a place that was created for that. And it was about more of the embodiment of an area that's created for spiritual, that we all can agree that there is a spiritual presence when you put the intention around that. There was a guy who was having a freak out. It's actually in the Harvard paperwork. And he was running around the street, and finally a couple of the other people on acid went out, brought him in there, and fucking, he had like his hugest spiritual moment, and all the fear went away. But when he took him to prisons, that was their worst experience. And it wasn't because of their idea of it. It was because of the way that the people that were behind bars were fucking energetically approaching and talking, and the way that they were running into their cells and doing all this shit behind that weird shit. I love Timothy Leary's work because and that's why he got kicked out, because the psychedelic revolution really like was waking people up. And
well, he also had some ties to the CIA, which I think made him a few enemies along the way, right? At certain
yeah, because he only got arrested seriously here in Laguna Beach for weed, and somehow was facing 30 years and got off.
Well, the Weather Underground broke him out of prison.
Yeah,
like,
no,
you know that story, right?
I know the story because my best friend's grandfather is the judge who literally was the one who sentenced him for the marijuana.
And
so
he went to Liberia with Eldridge fucking Cleaver. Like,
I know.
That was like, that's a whole weird. All right, I got to wrap this up, but I want to do one more thing before we leave.
Yeah, let's one more thing. Hey, guide us, projector. Guide us.
Well, I just want to do a little mind experiment here, based on where we know about what we know about the outer planets, where they are. Let's talk about the next pope, and let's attach an astrological sign to the next pope. What do you got?
Well, I've already looked into this, and the last time we had a pope come in with Neptune in Aries at 0 degrees and Pluto in Aquarius in the first couple, the guy was 68 years old. So it's going to be somebody who's 68 or 69 years old, because it tracks with the North Node nodal aspects in the chart. So one of them is a Virgo, because the pope that died during that time was a Pisces with Sun and Venus. And the one that I picked because of that random number, because that's a nodal transit, is a Virgo with a Sun and Venus, exactly the complete twin opposite of the Pope of the one that died back in 1534.
So you're going with Virgo? Is that what you're going with?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't even looked at the other ones yet, but
that is like a really beyond an educated guess. That is a deeply researched.
And I believe that it will not be the one that is going to be floated in the next week.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. So that was a deeply researched palace moment. I'm just going to go off pure speculation and hunch, with nothing to do with any of the historical references. I'm going with a Taurus.
Oh, how about Taurus? Now, this might not be astrological, but because it's kind of like about country, right? Like there's never been an American pope, right? Like the last pope was from Latin America.
Aren't they like shooting for Africa
years of just Italian popes, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like until John Paul II, he was the first one.
So they've been floating Africa as the place of the next pope,
and Asia too, and Asia.
And Asia.
So there's like 2 Filipinos, I think. I think there's 1 African. I think there's like 2 United States ones. There's the heads up that were around Francis or Italian. It's kind of a weird bunch of guys. But I do feel like it's political. And so I said this, and this is the way I think of it. If you're the Catholic Church, the reason why they picked Francis, and he was forced in there, right? Benedict was kicked out on purpose because Latin America was the #1 customer, right? Because Christianity in America was falling at all-time lows, and in Europe. So the one place is, well, all of South America, including Mexico, is like our fucking crop, right? Our moneymaker. So you throw Francis in. Well, now you have the opposite. Now you have Russia with Putin becoming a Orthodox Eastern Christian and putting that in the way that the governments run there, right? And all the values and even the way that he's doing his laws are all very hard Orthodox Eastern.
Yeah,
Christian.
I mean he's kind of doing an Alexander. Is it? I always get these guys mixed up. Alexander the Second, not.
Oh yeah, the Tsar. Yeah.
Yeah, he basically said we're going to be Russian. We're going to be Russian, and the church is going to. Everybody's going to have to go to church. Everybody's going to have to be Orthodox. Like Russian is going to be the language. There won't be any German spoken here.
And that's what Putin just dropped on Ukraine yesterday on the church.
Right. It's very similar, right? Okay, I'm gonna change my prediction. I'm overthinking it. Saturn, Neptune, Aries. Next pope's in Aries. There you go. That's my prediction.
I like that.
Yep. I'm not going to overthink it. It's right there. It's right in front of me. I don't want to have this. Oh shit! I should have remembered Saturn Neptune conjunction. Right. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, and I think for me it was the Virgo because of the last Pope, Pisces, but also because the South Node's there in Virgo, and they need somebody to execute some sort of like agenda and get a rhythm going.
Was it Ratzinger a Virgo?
I don't remember, but I just know that you have the whole now Western world going super Christian, including America, including the Western countries in Europe. Right, they're all, the bump up is like watching a stock chart, doing the opposite of a crash, a fucking pump, a bull run.
So
they're not going to go with a liberal pope like Francis was liberal, and all of the people surrounded him were promoting Ukraine and LGBTQ and all that, right? So it's going to be a hardline Catholic, old school value pope.
Okay, so Ratzinger was in Aries.
Oh, interesting.
April 16th. All right, so now I'm changing again. All right, so Ratzinger's in Aries, and then Benedict, or Francis rather, was
Sag.
Sag. I'm going midpoint. I'm going Leo.
Is there a Leo one going? I don't even know. We don't know all the cardinals, right? Like, because that's the thing. Like, they put up the people they think because they have reporters on the ground, but that just shows you how political it is. But it's like there's a lot of popes or a lot of cardinals in there. And there's a lot of bishops who at the same time want to become cardinals that probably will do some things to help a cardinal to get in. If you fucking do this for me, bishop, and start talking. Because one of them is the American is the head of all the bishops in the church. He overlooks all the bishops. So I was like, he's probably telling all the bishops, you guys, if you guys want to be a cardinal, I'll make you one if I become pope. So you need to start getting every cardinal to fucking get me, you know? So
Peter Erdo, who is one of the candidates, he's Hungarian. And he is...
I was going to bring up Hungary. That's so funny. And where they've gone super right.
He's a Cancer.
Oh, that would track with... Honestly, I think it's more like, is it a cardinal sign or a mutable sign or a fixed sign? And I would agree that it's probably going to be a cardinal sign. My thing is off some really weird Leo King bullshit, right? Like really like going down the fucking mundane astrology hole. But like, if you think of where the planets are going and the new direction, it's all very cardinal. It's probably, ironically, a cardinal with a cardinal fucking sign.
Right. Well, that brings us into Aries, right?
Right. Or Jupiter coming into Cancer, right, and taking it to the big square to Saturn and Neptune and Aries, and so that kind of adds that whole aspect to it all. It's like, whoa.
So Pietro Parolin is the guy who is currently the secretary, the Vatican secretary. Yeah, and
he's from Italy, right?
Hold on. Yeah, he's from Italy. So, okay, ordination, consecration, created, appointed. Okay, he is a Capricorn.
Cardinal.
So
Although I
cardinal
don't think it's
sign.
going to be he's the one being promoted at the top. And he's got like JFK's like birthday. I think it's January 17th or something. And I'm like, look what happened to RFK Jr. Like, ran for president, but okay, he's already in the position as being like as a secretary, right? Like being high up, but not the man. I don't think Capricorns are going to be the ones that people are picking, especially Saturn coming in Aries. Nah. I think
the Filipino prelate, Luis Antonio Tagle, is barely a Gemini, June 21st, 1957.
Well, he's going to have the Jupiter, Sun, new moon on his... But he's also going to have Saturn, Neptune square his Sun right now. I personally don't think they're picking an Asian one because they've already lost 2/3 of Southeast Asia to China. It's taken over the whole region, and I think that the Catholic Church is about to, as they do in history, bail on countries, right? So I think they're about bailing on the region.
Okay, all right. Here we go. This is my guy.
You got him? You found him?
This is my guy. This is where I go back to the original Taurus proclamation.
Which Uranus would throw the tailspin, right? And it's happening in the conclave in Taurus with the Uranus and the full moon in Scorpio and all that shit.
Okay, this is the dude right here. His name is Pier Battista Pizzaballa. That's the guy.
What's his birthday? And he's a Taurus?
Yeah, April 21st.
Oh, so
1965. 1965. He's born in the year of the snake. This is his.
He's got Pluto. He's got Pluto, Uranus. He's got the Saturn opposition in Pisces.
After completing his postgraduate studies, Pizzaballa taught biblical Hebrew at the Franciscan Faculty of Biblical and Archaeological Sciences in Jerusalem. Was responsible for the publication of the Roman Missal in Hebrew in 1995 and translated liturgical texts in Hebrew. This guy's got a very strong connection. He's in Jerusalem. He was the Latin
we know that the hand and
Jerusalem.
glove of both Israel and the Catholic Church are for sure if he comes in.
That's my guy. I'm going with Pizzaballa.
With extra toppings.
There's a couple others, I think. We got Cardinal Matteo Zuppi. Let's just check him out real quick. All right.
My guy I forgot his name. He's from America and he's the head of the bishops. He's the archbishop of all the bishops. He's like the head of the bishops.
Matteo Zuppi is a Libra, born October 11th.
Oh, that's a bad day.
Are you talking about Cardinal Raymond Leo Burke? Is that your dude?
No, his name's Robert, which is an English name. So I tried to look up his parents. You can't find anything about his parents. And he looks South American because he has his mom or his dad was South American, but they named him Robert. So I'm like,
the other thing about this Pizzaballa guy, he's young, right? Like I'm looking at Raymond Leo Burke, Cancer.
oh, so he doesn't have too many boys yet in his quiver that he's played with.
Well, I also think they want some longevity. They don't want to
longevity of
replace this dude in a couple of months.
Hey, that's what's in the astrology. It's not crazy to think that we would actually have a pope and then another pope.
I could see that. Mario Gretsch is another candidate, right in the cusp of Aquarius Pisces, February 20th, 1956.
Oh, my guy's Robert Prevost. Yeah. Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, my guy's Robert Prevost.
Let's see. There's a Robert Sara. But there's a lot of people going. Also in the running, Reinhard Marx, Angela Scola, Wim Edgick, Robert Prevost. He's in the running. He's also in the running, so he's a dark horse. Can we place a bet on this, like in Vegas?
Whoever wins hosts the next combo of you and I.
Oh, your dude, Robert Prevost is a Virgo.
Yeah, he's by Virgo, yeah.
So he totally fits your model.
And he has Uranus at 0 or 1 degrees of Leo, and there was also a North Node Saturn conjunction the last time that Neptune was in Aries, Pluto was at 2 degrees Aquarius, North Node Saturn, but in Leo, happening in that same spot, and it was a South Node Pluto conjunction in Aquarius, and I was like, oh, then there's something about the nodes, and so he's got North Node in Sag squaring the nodes, and he's in a big nodal transit, and all these things happening, and he's got Mars that just was on his Uranus, and Pluto opposing his Uranus that's going to retrograde back. So I was like, damn, this is the guy. And he was born with the sun and Venus in Virgo, and same was the Pope that died in 1534, and he's the exact copycat opposite of that. And plus, Neptune was exactly opposite as Venus when it's stationed direct at 24 degrees, and he has Venus at 24 degrees Virgo.
There you go. That's the astro math right there. There are 2 popes that have the same birthday, October 11th.
Oh, that's just a day that I just. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Just.
Peter Turkson from Africa is born October 11th. So there are 2 popes born on October. That's interesting. Doesn't surprise me though. And then Cardinal Robert Sarah, June 15th. So we have another Gemini in the mix. And then we have Cardinal Fridolin and Bongo Basungu. Now that would be a very interesting pope right there. And he's, I think, one of the African popes.
I don't think they're going to go. They're not going to go with anybody that's outside. They're going to go hardcore West, America, Russia, Europe. Okay. They're going to go, we got our group back. They're all fucking falling for our bullshit again. We need to take them all in. And we already got all the people in the Latin America who are going to follow because we had Francis and we got the whole world but Asia left.
Dude, we might have to completely rethink this whole thing because this guy Fridolin and Bongo Basungu, born January 24th, he's got a Sun-Pluto conjunction. And he's the papal frontrunner. Okay, what do you think? This guy's sun is conjunct freaking Pluto, right? Like he is here to usher in the new era of Catholicism. He's going to be the first literal black pope versus the black pope that you don't see. Right. This, I don't know, man. I could be moving all my chips in on Fridolin and Bongo Basungo with that Sun-Pluto conjunction.
My chips are on Aries and the identification of the church and these cardinals being like, bring back the one who will let us fuck boys. I'm horrible. I know.
You really are. All right.
But that was a great talk. I think that we're in a hot zone. I know I named it that, but it's like we just covered just like
it got spicy in there for a while.
It did, but it's gonna get spicier. The water's just starting to bubble. It's not even boiling yet. The frog hasn't even started to realize the water's boiling.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, we should do this again.
100%, dude.
In the not so distant future.
I agree. And, I mean, we're coming into May. Saturn's coming into Aries. Like, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, all these other things make a traditional biggest transit is always Saturn ingress into a new sign, make it seem like, whatever, it's just Saturn and Aries. Like, I don't know, no big deal. This is going to be the thing that causes it all to start to go, what the fuck? Like, it's going to totally transform everything.
No. This is huge. So, is it okay for me to? It's got to be okay.
You can invite me to
David
anything.
David and I have actually talked about doing an event.
Yes,
together. And we would love your feedback in terms of participation and wanting to be a part of it. The last time David came to Texas, smash hit.
It was the most fun I've had at any event doing astrology ever. It was like the people.
Yeah.
It was honestly, yeah, dude. That was like top notch.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And my whole life changed after that event. So, you know how
It
you
really
say,
did,
"Oh, I
didn't
go to
it?
an event," and like, oh, you hear people like, "Did your life really change?" I mean, kind of. My life literally changed forever after that event. So, I became a dad. We made the choices at that event. We're gonna become parent. Let's do this. Let's do that.
You got all grown up after that.
Yeah, I
event.
grew up. So,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm proud.
but yeah, we really want to do an event, and we feel like, you know, Robert and I in person talking, 2 mics, and really going to town and really having participation and really bringing people together.
And some cool activities and
Yes.
you know, and opening in the true Pluto in Aquarius spirit, like opening it up to people, right, and allowing people to kind of be a part of the experience and not just be a participant of the experience, or
Right.
a participant of the experience and not just being kind of a witness to it, right? Like really get into this Pluto and Aquarius thing.
I mean, the last event that you did that I was at, there was that girl Aubrey. She just was here last week and I recorded her podcast, but let her use the studio, and she interviewed me here. And it's like, that was a connection. You know, Christian, he's an amazing astrologer at the event. Evan Grimm, like,
Evan was there.
I mean,
yeah.
to watch Evan and Christian after that event just blow up, like, boom, like there's
and
something about
Benito was there.
Benito.
I mean, like,
Well, Benito's always like just going to the next level anytime, all the time.
Right, exactly. That's
all the time.
I'm sure he appreciates.
He's the only guy in the world I can talk to about the train system and what's really going on, like, and how it's connected to the astrology and all the Neptune.
Oh, dude, he is so dialed into that world.
I know,
right.
And I learned more from him than ever because I have to ask him questions, because you know that's what's weird about these transits is it does bring up this idea of trains, and that's what you've seen California been trying for all these years. And so when you think of like planes and they're not really working well and they're super train, like you gotta like think part of the new future grid shit's gonna be about trains. Personally, even under the ocean and to other countries, that's what I think is gonna be the next thing.
Oh, I think they already have it.
I do. I'm saying public ones that you know we haven't fucked little kids. We're not cardinals, and we're not fucking Zionists that go in and do all. You know, we're not whatever.
David, the future has been on hold for too long. I mean, let's just agree upon that.
Yeah.
Right. It's been on hold for too long, and we know that. Have you heard about this? This underground expressway they have in LA. Have you heard about this?
Oh, but with the Starbucks and Jerry Seinfeld goes there all the time.
Yeah.
And the guy who worked it was like, oh, I saw Jerry Seinfeld come through, and it's free. Everything's free.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's
and then that Tucker Carlson interview with that woman yesterday literally brings up the whole, not about that, but now there's 167 underground bases and underground transportation systems. And I've been to Washington, got the executive tour, was underneath, went into the Senate, went into the train. They have Abraham Lincoln's train, because that's the other thing. This is the transit where Abraham Lincoln created an underground tunnel system for himself to get in and out of Washington, because that's the same way he had to come into Washington hidden, couldn't wear his top hat because the nation.
Here's where I'm going to go with that. This is when Abraham Lincoln discovered the underground railway system that was already there.
Yeah.
And decided that
to copy it.
We can fire
and
this thing back up.
Tax everybody in the North and be like, hey, it's for the war, but really I'm building this shit over here.
To me, that's like uncovering some of that Tartarian stuff. It's like, oh,
and you know, the taking away the writ of habeas corpus is Neptune Aries. He's the only president, the first one to do it, right? With the excuse of, well, the South is up here and they're about to fucking come into Washington and try and take it out, right? So he fucking took all of Americans' habeas corpus rights away in order to do that, right? So that's a Neptune Aries thing.
Wow. David, we could go on forever, man, and I wouldn't be bored. You wouldn't be bored, and I think people in chat would love it too. So this has been awesome. Thanks for inviting me over here.
No problem, bro. You know, next time I see you, I hope they're not throwing astrologers in El Salvador prisons. So that'll be the next.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So yeah, let's we'll have our own conclave, and then we'll talk about having an event sometime in the coming months, and we'll keep people abreast of that.
Yeah, just the solstice. We're having my son's being born, so
not the solstice. Definitely not the solstice. Maybe sometime before September or after September. Like
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm able to do things, it's just, that like 3-4 weeks,
right.
2 before, and after.
So your son is going to be born on the solstice? Is that
his
right?
due date right now is, of course, June 23rd, but only 8% of people ever hit the due date. So obviously it's either the week prior, the week after, or whatever, but it's right there on the solstice with the sun, Jupiter, with Jupiter coming into Cancer, the square to Saturn.
He'll be the real prince. He'll be the real prince.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I created the Leo King
prince.
Under the sun, Jupiter, and Gemini, which was June 19th, 2013, and that chart. What's weird is there's no sun, Jupiter, Gemini this year or last year there wasn't. It's missing Gemini completely. So that's why, I'll be real. The reason why I don't see Trump long is because, and Gemini's not being in power is because you don't get, the energy of kings is sun, Jupiter. And the fact that it misses Gemini, it's like not anointing any of you that are in power as kings anymore. You don't get the sun, Jupiter. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So a lot of Geminis are going to be falling out of position.
You people in chat who are Geminis, don't take that personally, by the way.
No, it means
David's
there's
really
another path for you and not the one that you were so focused on.
Yeah.
So think about all the Geminis, like Andy Cohen, head of Bravo, probably won't be after this summer. Like
Russell Brand.
He's probably going to go to prison. Like, like
Kanye.
I mean, you could start running the Gemini list and you kind of go, oh no.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like Boris Johnson, he put out his book, like COVID was all bullshit and we were making all of this shit up. I'm like, wow. Like, the problem with Trump is he won't even still address the fucking COVID fucking bullshit, right? Like,
no, he had to have, what's that guy's name? John Rich talk about
that was the most interesting fucking moment of a podcast I've heard in 5 years. Was just like the motherfucker didn't even know that everybody that was like a Trump person that wanted Trump was like, shut the fuck up about your stupid Operation Warp Speed, and fucking had to tell Lindsey Graham like, hey, fucking shut the fuck up, don't interrupt me. And then Lindsey Graham got all like swishing his, as he said, swishing his white wine, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to fucking da-da-da. I was like, fucking, that's exactly, that guy cannot make that combo up. That's exactly how I would see it play out.
Yeah. By the way, I have intel, which I have thought, it came into my brain one day. Donald Trump does not know how to drive.
No.
And that was a confirmation today. I got it from somebody on the inside. He doesn't know how to drive. Like that whole Tesla thing, it was just a photo. He's never learned, hey, you drive a golf cart, and that's about it.
Yeah, I think he's afraid of it. Because remember, he's also a germaphobe. So, like, the reason why we got 6 feet away or everybody use hand sanitizers because he's obsessed with cleaning his hands and not touching things and all that shit. Like, he's got
a Howard,
not Howie Lindell, but he's close.
He's got a Howard Hughes thing going on there.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I was thinking of Howie.
What is it with the name Howie? Like I don't know. Howard Hughes was a germaphobe too.
Right, but yeah, like he is. I know that about Trump too. He's extreme germaphobe. Like, so. Yeah. I think he's also afraid of like an engine in front of him. Like, oh.
Well, he was driven around all the time, like car service in New York. Why would he know? Why would he need to drive?
Yeah, in the 70s and 80s, he was in limos in the backseat of the limo with the fucking phone. Like, I'm making deals, or
Right, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, David. Thanks for having me on, brother.
Thank you. We'll see you all soon. Make sure you follow Robert. The link's under this video to follow his channel because you're live every Sunday, right? And you also do other videos all the time too.
I'm live a lot.
Yep. All right. Yep. Much love, everyone. Thanks. Adios. Bye-bye.